The OBR has downgraded its growth forecast for the UK in each of the next 4 years. The biggest growth forecast cut is in 2026 as a whole. The OBR is now expecting the economy to grow by 1.4% next year. In March, it was saying 1.9%, but it's down every year.
It's worth getting back to why we've pulled away from our usual show on PMQ's Live, Gloria and Ian, because the budget has leaked. That is what has happened here. By someone pushing out the OBR forecast with the budget measures in it, the budget has leaked. This is a catastrophe for the government. It shows a lack of discipline. The heads will roll for this. I don't know how high up it will go, Ian King, but it's really, really serious.
Well, it's actually the sort of cherry on the icing, Chris, if you like, because look, it's what, 83 days since the Chancellor announced the date of the budget, and every single one of those days has seen some kind of leak or some kind of policy that was in the budget floated out there, speculated upon. Some of them were obviously, I mean, Rachel Reeves claims that she was very angry about this, but a lot of that was undoubtedly the Treasury flying ideas out, flying kites, what will land, what won't land. But so really, this is the sort of the ultimate climax to that. You know, the whole blooming thing's leaked. It's just extraordinary.
And I know you're not a politician, Ian. And just to let viewers and listeners know that we will be joined by politicians as soon as Rachel Reeves sat down. Then Kemi Badenoch responds, of course. She has a lot of time to prepare that speech that she wouldn't have done otherwise, because she's got the entire budget. But I was thinking, one of the difficulties with what you've just said, Ian, is that there's a debt problem in this country. Rachel Reeves talks about it all the time, that £1 of every £10 of government spend is spent on debt interest. But she's going to increase the debt. Did I understand that correctly?
Oh, yeah, debt carries on rising every year.
How do you square that circle, Chris?
Well, I don't know, but I would say in a government's favour, normally if debt goes up, the markets panic. The markets are not panicking, Ian King, are they? You're a financial journalist, you can look at this quickly more than I can, but they are not. Nothing's happening on the market. It's becalmed. That's a good thing.
Yeah, they're looking at. I mean, overall, the markets will be looking at debt to GDP ratios, the ability of the government to service its debt in years to come. So obviously, there's going to be an element of growth, albeit it doesn't look, according to the OBR, as if the economy is going to grow much more than 1.5% a year, if that, over coming years. But if you're growing the economy more rapidly than you're growing your debts, then the debt to GDP ratio comes down, and that ultimately looks like what's going to happen. It ends the decade, according to this, at 96%. So I mean, it's the other thing I noticed from the OBR forecast, by the way, is that the debt to GDP ratio is forecast to come down more slowly than it was expecting in March, which ain't great.
Ian, I want to bring an update now from the OBR. They have now apologised for the early upload of this budget forecast. It's blamed a technical error and launched an investigation. They will say they'll make sure it never happens again. I'm not sure that's enough, by the way. I think the gravity of this is really serious. We've seen chancellors resign before, as you said, in the past, over the issue of early leaking of the budget. No one's saying that Rachel Reeves wanted this to happen.
Do you know what?
No one's saying it's her fault, but someone's got to be on the hook for this.
Don't forget, there are an awful lot of people, particularly on the Labour left, who really, really dislike the OBR, and also on the right, by the way. You know, Reform have been quite critical of it as well.
And Liz Truss.
Yeah, Liz Truss despises the OBR. Yeah, so a lot of people will use this as a stick potentially to beat the OBR.
And do you know what's happened here? I was on the way in with a former senior member of the Tory government. They were saying it's a nightmare today for Kemi Badenoch because she has to respond in real time as the speech is delivered, and she won't see the OBR forecast or the Red Book until as she's speaking. But now she's had a 90-minute window. It's a gift from heaven. She can go through the exact numbers. And we're now at the final question of Prime Minister's question. So shortly, we'll be changing over. The Speaker will change chairs and bring in the Chairman of the Ways and Means, I think is Dame Caroline Noakes. She'll take over as Speaker for the budget.
It's a weird title, isn't it? But the big Speaker cannot preside over a budget for historical reasons, which we neither know or care that much. But that's what's going to happen after Prime Minister.
That's right. And Ian King, your final thoughts before we go to the budget.
OK, well, I've just delighted on this paragraph in the OBR thing. Over the medium term, the cost of these measures, which we're about to hear, is more than offset by a wide-ranging set of changes to tax policy, which raise receipts and lower borrowing by £0.7 billion in 2026-27, rising to £26.1 billion by 29.30. As a share of GDP, the policies in this budget deliver the third largest medium-term tax increase since the OBR was established in 2010, after the March 2021, the pandemic budget, and the October 2024 budgets. Rachel Reeves is first, of course.
Thank you. Let's change over now in House of Commons there, Gloria. We can see on our screens.
Yes, it's always, there's not enough room in there today. It is Ghani.
It's Ghani. Here comes the Chancellor, but we know what's in it.
Stay with us.
Madam Deputy Speaker, this morning we have seen an unprecedented leak of the OBR's Economic and Fiscal Outlook report before the budget. This report contains market-sensitive information. It is utterly outrageous that this has happened, and this leak may indeed constitute a criminal act. In Prime Minister's questions, the Leader of the Opposition asked the Prime Minister about this leak, but he refused to answer her question. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, please can you advise this House what steps are at its disposal to force a leak inquiry into this matter? And would it be possible to ask the Table Office to distribute copies of the report given to the House, given that everybody outside of this House has already had the opportunity to read it?
Order! This is not a point of order for the Chair. The Chancellor is about to make her budget statement, and I expect members and their constituents wish to hear from the Chancellor directly. However, before I call the Chancellor to speak, I nonetheless wish to make a short statement. For a number of weeks, and yet again yesterday, there have been extensive briefings to the media on the government's fiscal policy and public finances. This disappointing trend in relation to budget briefings has been growing for a number of years under successive governments, but appears to have reached an unprecedented high. Weeks ago, we saw the Chancellor delivering a speech in Downing Street, setting the scene for the budget, as well as specific policy announcements being briefed out to the media in advance of today's financial statements. I don't need any help. And just a moment ago, it seems the OBR analysis has also appeared online. This all falls short of standards that the House expects. The premature disclosure of the contents of the budget has always been regarded as a supreme discourtesy to this House and to all the democratically elected members, not to mention to Mr. Speaker and to myself, the Chairman of Ways and Means. The government's own ministerial code cannot be clearer, as set out in paragraph 9.1. When Parliament is in session, the most important announcements of government policy should be made in the first instance to Parliament. Mr. Speaker has always upheld the rights of this House and its members to be treated with respect and to be the first to hear major government policy announcements on behalf of their constituents. As Chairman of Ways and Means, I have responsibility to oversee the House's consideration of the budget statement and the ensuing resolutions, which are described in Erskine May paragraph 36-33 as the most important business of Ways and Means in this House. I want honourable members on all sides of the House to have adequate opportunity to hold the Chancellor to account, rather than hear and read about new policies on a daily basis in the media. And like many, I also expected better. Before I call the Chancellor of the Exchequer, I remind honourable members that copies of the budget resolutions will be available to them from the vote office in members' lobby at the end of the Chancellor's statement and online. Shh. I also remind honourable members that interventions are not taken during the Chancellor's statement, nor during replies to the Leader of the Opposition or the Leader of the Liberal Democrats. I call the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Chancellor.
Madam Deputy Speaker, it is my understanding that the Office of Budget Responsibility's Economic and Financial Outlook was released on their website before this statement. This is deeply disappointing and a serious error on their part. The Office Office for Budget Responsibility have already made a statement taking full responsibility for their breach. Madam Deputy Speaker, we are rebuilding our economy. Over the last 16 months, we have overhauled our planning system to get Britain building, forged new trade deals with the United States, India and the European Union, reformed our visa system to bring the brightest and the best to Britain. We changed our fiscal rules that we inherited from the Conservatives and raised public investment to its highest level in 4 decades. And in last year's budget, I raised taxes on business and the wealthiest to close the £22 billion black hole in the public finances left by the party opposites. And we used that money to fund the biggest ever settlement for our National Health Service. They were the fair and necessary choices, and we faced opposition to them, from opponents to planning reform, who will always demand that the future is built somewhere else, not in their backyard. Opponents to trade, who want to take us down the path of isolation and division. Opponents to investment, who believe that the only good thing a government can do is get out of the way. Opponents who insist that the only way to balance the books is to cut public spending. And opponents who say that we don't need to balance the books at all. But we made these choices for a reason. Because after 14 years of Conservative government, working people demanded and deserved change. Investment, not cuts to our public services. Stability for our public finances. The single most important factor in getting the cost of living down. And economic growth, the best means to improve wages, create jobs, and support public services. That is what our plan, that is what this government and our Prime Minister are all about. Today's budget builds on the choices that we have made since July last year. To cut NHS waiting lists, to cut the cost of living, and to cut debt and borrowing. No doubt we will face opposition again, but I have yet to see a credible or a fairer alternative plan for working people. These are my choices, the right choices for a fairer, a stronger and more secure Britain.
Order. Far too much noise, and I expected so much better from you, Dr. Luke Evans. You're meant to be a leader in your community. Simmer down, Chancellor.
I'm happy for them to shout as much as they like, Madam Deputy Speaker, as long as they do it from the opposition benches where they can't cause any more damage. I said there would be no return to austerity, and I meant it. This budget will maintain investment in our economy and in our National Health Service. I said I would cut the cost of living, and I meant it. This budget will bring down inflation and provide immediate relief for families. I said I would cut debt and borrowing, and I meant it. Because of this budget, borrowing will fall as a share of GDP in every year of this forecast. Our net financial debt will be lower at the end of the forecast than it is today, and I will more than double the headroom against our stability rule to £21.7 billion, meeting our stability rule and meeting it a year early. These are my choices, not austerity, not borrowing, not turning a blind eye to unfairness. My choices are a budget for fair taxes, strong public services, and a stable economy. That is the Labour choice. Growth is the engine that carries every one of our ambitions forward, through stability, investment, and reform. The platform from which British ambition can finally get moving again. Because growth doesn't just appear out out of thin air. It is built patiently and stubbornly by people who take risks, by founders who bet their savings on an idea, by firms breaking into new markets, developing new technologies and creating new jobs and new opportunities, by the men and the women who work hard every day in all parts of our country. Our job is not to watch from the sidelines, but to partner with them, backing them every step of the way, to match private enterprise with public ambition. I would like to thank my team of officials at the Treasury for their hard work in preparing this budget. In the spring, the Office of Budget Responsibility forecast that our economy would grow by 1% this year. I said then that Britain would defy the forecasts, and defy them we have. The OBR have upgraded Britain's growth for this year from 1% to 1.5%. Reaching the same conclusions as the IMF, the OECD and the Bank of England, who have already upgraded their forecasts. Today, the OBR have published the result of their review of the supply side of the economy. They are clear that this is not about the last 14 months. It is about the previous 14 years. The legacy of Brexit and the pandemic, and the damaging decisions by the party opposite. Cutting public spending, leaving communities and entire regions behind, starving our economy of investment and weakening our public services. As a result of their review, the OBR are reducing their expectations for productivity growth by 0.3 percentage points to 1% by the end of the forecast. They say today, and I quote, "Real GDP is forecast to grow by 1.5% on average over the forecast due to lower underlying productivity growth. There is an impact on our public finances too. The OBR say that their productivity forecast will mean £16 billion less in tax receipts by 2030. These forecasts are the Tories' legacy, not Britain's destiny.
Order. It is very hard to hear the Chancellor with all the shouting. And Mr Holmes, you promised me yesterday you were going to be on top behaviour in the first few minutes. Chancellor.
We beat the forecasts this year and we will beat them again. By boosting trade, not blocking it, by increasing investment, not cutting it, by championing innovation, not stifling it, by backing working people, not making them poorer. Brick by brick, we've been building our economy. Building roads, building homes, getting spades in the ground and cranes in the sky. Growth begins with the spark of an entrepreneur. Half of new jobs in Britain are created by scale-up businesses. And we want those jobs created here, not somewhere else. Our job is to make Britain the best place in the world to start up, to scale up and to stay. So we're widening eligibility for our enterprise incentives, so scale-ups can attract the talent and the capital that they need. Expanding the enterprise management incentive so more companies can offer tax-relieved share options. Re-engineering our enterprise investment and venture capital trust schemes so they don't just back early-stage ideas, but stay with companies as they grow. Introducing UK listings relief, a 3-year exemption from stamp duty reserve tax for companies who choose to list here in Britain. And to continue this work, I am launching a call for evidence on how our tax system can better back entrepreneurs, and a targeted review with founders and investors at the heart to make the UK an even more attractive place to grow your business. We are sending a simple message to the world. If you build here, Britain will back you. And our retail investment system should do the same. The UK has some of the lowest levels of retail investment in the G7. And that is not only bad for business, who need that investment to grow, it's bad for savers too. Someone who has invested £1,000 a year in an average stocks and shares ISA every year since 1999 would be £50,000 better off today if they'd put that same money into a cash ISA. And so from April 2027, I will reform our ISA system, keeping the full £20,000 allowance while designating 8,000 of it exclusively for investment, with over 65s retaining the full cash allowance. And thanks to our changes to financial advice and guidance, banks will be able to guide savers to better choices for their hard-earned money. Over 50% of the ISA market, including Hargreaves Lansdown, HSBC, Lloyds, Vanguard and Barclays, have signed up to launch new online hubs to help people invest here in Britain. At this budget, consistent with the commitments in our corporate tax roadmap, I will retain our competitive corporation tax rate, the lowest in the G7, and retain our generous full expensing offer for business investments. I will also introduce a new 40% first-year allowance so that businesses can write off more of the cost of their investment up front, while reducing main rate writing down allowances in line with fiscal constraints. Private investment is the lifeblood of economic growth, but growth needs public investment too. When faced with challenges, previous chancellors have chosen to decrease, delay or cancel capital spending. But low investment is the cause of our productivity problem, not the solution. So my choice is not cuts, not stagnation, but to maintain the additional £120 billion of investment that I provided at the spending review. In transport, to link our towns and our cities, energy infrastructure to power our businesses, and housing, so people can live near good jobs, paying decent wages and growing businesses. That is the Labour choice. I'm grateful to the Financial Secretary to the Treasury for his work in driving our growth agenda forward. As we allocate investment for the infrastructure that is the backbone of economic growth across our country, today I will commit investment for the Lower Thames Crossing. And we're continuing to drive investment in city-region transport, in the Midlands Rail Hub and the Transpennine Route upgrade, along with our commitments to the Northern Growth Corridor, including Northern Powerhouse Rail. It is this Labour government that has overhauled our planning system, and I will today provide further funding to increase planning capacity through a new skills offer, as called for by the British Chamber of Commerce and the Confederation of British Industry. It is this Labour government that has invested in nuclear power, in Sizewell C and in Culham. We are taking forward our commitment to slash electricity prices for thousands of manufacturing businesses, as Make UK and many others have called for. And today I'm pleased to welcome John Finkelton's report, an ambitious plan to cut the red tape that has tied our nuclear industry in knots for decades. And within 3 months we will set out our plan for delivering his recommendations. We are proud of our industrial heritage, and we are determined to build the industry of the future so that we buy, make and sell more here in Britain. That's why, as we increase defence spending, we are investing in Portsmouth, in Barrow and in Plymouth. And I'm pleased to be supporting Team Derby, an initiative to drive growth in one of our defence industry hubs. It's why we stepped in to save British Steel in Scunthorpe and invested in Sheffield Forge Masters. And it's why we've changed government procurement so we can buy British when it is crucial to our national security. For steel, for shipbuilding, and today for AI, driving innovation and building that great industry here in Britain. But it's not just what we invest that matters, it's how we invest. Putting money and power back in the hands of local and regional leaders. Today, we are devolving £13 billion of flexible funding for 7 mayors to invest in skills, business support and infrastructure. I'm extending the business rates retention pilots in the West of England, Liverpool City region and Cornwall until 2029. I'm providing £30 million for the Kernow Industrial Growth Fund for sectors like critical minerals and marine innovation. I am establishing the Leeds City Fund, a long-term agreement to retain business rates to fund local regeneration projects like the development of Leeds South Bank, and I am allocating £20 million for the new Peterborough Sports Quarter and £16 million for a science centre in Darlington from the Growth Mission Fund. The benefits of investment. The benefits of investment and growth must be built and felt in every part of our United Kingdom. So we are providing an additional £370 million for the Northern Ireland Executive, £505 million for the Welsh Government and £820 million for the Scottish Government over the spending review period through the Barnett formula. And I am making... Sorry, I didn't quite catch that from the SNP. Did they not? Perhaps, Madam Deputy Speaker, they didn't hear. £820 million for the Scottish Government over the spending review period because Anna Sawa asked us to. And I'm making targeted investments in our industrial strategy sectors across the UK. In Northern Ireland, I am providing £17 million to support businesses and strengthen the UK internal market, and backing advanced manufacturing through the Northern Ireland Enhanced Investment Zone. Wales will be the host for 2 AI growth zones, creating more than 8,000 jobs, supported by a £10 million investment in the semiconductors critical for that industry. And we are building the UK's first small modular nuclear reactors with Rolls-Royce at Wilfer in Anglesey. 2 Labour governments working together in Wales to deliver for the people of Wales. And in Scotland, I'm committing over £14 million for low-carbon technologies in Grangemouth, £20 million to renew infrastructure at Inch Green in Inverclyde, and £20 million to redevelop Kirkcaldy Town Centre and Seafront, with construction starting next year. And that's on top of the UK's biggest ever warship export deal with the Norwegian government to build frigates in Glasgow, supporting 4,000 jobs, investment opposed by the SNP, jobs opposed by the SNP, defence opposed by the SNP, but secured by this Labour government. A growing economy needs strong foundations of economic stability, with borrowing, inflation down and investment up. That is good for business, and it is good for working people, so they have more money in their pockets. Economic stability, safeguarded by ironclad fiscal rules, is our best defence against rising prices and the best way to improve living standards. We've all seen the alternative. 3 years ago, in their clamour to cut taxes for the richest, the Tories under Liz Truss crashed the economy and sent mortgage rates spiralling and brought pensions to the brink. They've been so loud, Madam Deputy Speaker, and yet I can't even hear them now. I know that the leader of the Green Party is a keen hypnotherapist, and he believes that he can achieve remarkable things using only the power of his mind. Unfortunately, the only things getting bigger under his approach would be the deficit and the rate of inflation. And for all the damage that the Conservative cuts did to our schools and our hospitals, they also doubled the national debt. Our net financial debt this year will be £2.6 trillion, 83% of GDP, meaning that today, 1 in every £10 that government spends is on debt interest. Not on paying down that debt, but just on paying the interest on the debt that we inherited from the Conservatives. My fiscal rules will get borrowing down while supporting investment. The stability rule, that day-to-day expenditure must be met through tax receipts. And the investment rule, which allows me to increase investment whilst getting debt on a downward path. Those fiscal rules are non-negotiable. I met them at the budget last year, I met them in the spring, and I have met them today. While the current budget balance is in deficit by £28.8 billion in 26-27 and £4.6 billion in 27-28, it moves into a surplus of £3.9 billion in 28-29, £21.7 billion in 29-30 and £24.6 billion in 2030-31, more than doubling our headroom against the stability rule and meeting that rule a year early too. And our net financial debt is 83.3% in 26-27, 83.6% in 27-28, 83.7% in 28-29, falling to 83.0% in 29-30 and 82.2% in 2030-31. Madam Deputy Speaker, I said we would cut the debt, and we are, with debt down by the end of the forecast. And going forwards, to support our commitment to a single fiscal event and further strengthen our economic stability, I will follow the recommendations of the International Monetary Fund by assessing the fiscal rules just once a year at the budget. Despite the challenges we face on productivity, the path of our deficit reduction remains broadly the same as in spring. Public sector net borrowing is due to be £112.1 billion, or 3.5% of GDP in 26-27, 3% in 27-28, 2.6% in 28-29, 1.9% in 29-30 and 1.9% in 2030-31, ending at £67.2 billion, translating into an increase in the net cash requirement next year of £4.2 billion, taking the total to £133.3 billion. According to the IMF, we are due to reduce borrowing more over the rest of this Parliament than any other G7 economy. The Conservatives crashed the economy, we are protecting it. The Conservatives lost control of debt, we are getting debt down. The Conservatives let inflation and interest rates go through the roof. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, since Labour took office, the Bank of England have cut interest rates 5 times. I've made my choices. Not reckless borrowing, not dangerous cuts, but stability for our economy, security for our public finances, and security for family finances too. Those are the Labour choices. Madam Deputy Speaker, Tory austerity left classrooms crumbling and waiting lists sky high, weakened our productivity and choked our economic growth. And now they propose a further £47 billion of cuts to our public services. Well, that is equivalent to cutting every police officer in our country twice over. And then there is Reform, who promise more than £100 billion of cuts, with no details of where those cuts will come from or who will pay for them. A recipe for devastating damage to our public services. People voted for Labour because they wanted roads that aren't full of potholes. They want police on our streets, and they want an NHS that is there when they need it. And we're delivering that. Waiting lists down by 230,000. And not just the 2 million additional appointments we promised, but an additional 5.2 million appointments already delivered since the general election. I joined the Labour Party almost 30 years ago because I could see that the Conservative government that I grew up under didn't care much about schools like mine. Textbooks were rationed. I know that many of you weren't at schools like mine.
There is far too much noise, far too much excitement. People need to calm down a little. Chancellor.
They don't want to hear what the Tories did to schools like mine, but I will tell them. Textbooks rationed, libraries closed, kids herded into porta cabins in the playground, and I came into politics to change that. The money that I allocated at the spending review will fix the crumbling classrooms that the Conservatives left behind and build the schools that they promised but never delivered. And today, thanks to representations from my honourable friends, the members for Wolverhampton North East and Leeds South West and Morley, I will provide £5 million for libraries in secondary schools, building on the £10 million commitment to ensure that every primary school has a school library within this Parliament. And thanks to representations from my honourable friends, the members for Bournemouth East and from Luton North, I am providing £18 million to improve and upgrade playgrounds across England. Madam Deputy Speaker, let there be no doubt that this is a government that is on the side of our kids and who will back their potential. I will not allow the legacies of Conservative neglect to stain our society. Last year, I made changes to the Mine Workers Pension Scheme to ensure that its members receive the fair pensions that they are owed. This year, with thanks to the Minister for Pensions for all his work in this subject, I can go further. I have heard representations from Labour Coalfield MPs, including my honourable friends, the members for Bassetlaw, Blythe and Ashington, Barnsley South, Mansfield and Llanelli. And today I can announce that I will transfer the Investment Reserve Fund of the British Coal Staff Superannuation Scheme to its members. Industry get a fair deal in their retirement too. And more. Having heard representations from my honourable friends, the members for Banbury and the member for Edinburgh South West, I will index for inflation on pensions accrued before 1997 in the Pension Protection Fund and the Financial Assurance Scheme, so that people whose pension schemes became insolvent, no fault of their own, no longer lose out as the result of inflation. Last year, I also provided funding to compensate the victims of the infected blood scandal, after the previous government failed to budget for the costs of compensation. This year, I have listened to representations from my honourable friend, the member for Eltham and Chislehurst, and my honourable friend, the member for Edinburgh South West. And I'd like to thank the Minister for Employment for her representations over many years on this subject. As a result, I will exempt all payments from the infected blood scheme from inheritance tax, regardless of the circumstances in which those payments are passed down. Madam Deputy Speaker, that is how we should be spending taxpayers' money, on dealing with injustices and building strong public services, not on waste and inefficiency. At the spending review, I set an ambitious target of £14 billion of efficiencies per year by 2029, and I am grateful to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury for driving that work forward, realising savings through AI and automation, and by scrapping NHS England and reducing back office staff by 18,000. At this budget, I will find a further £4.9 billion of efficiencies by 2031, getting rid of police and crime commissioners, cutting the cost of politics and local government, and selling government assets that we no longer have any use for. These savings will be required across government. But for our National Health Service, I will reinvest all of these savings back into the care that people rely on. More nurses, more GPs, more appointments. Restoring the services that faltered under years of Conservative decline and investing in the future of our National Health Service. And today I am announcing £300 million of investment in technology to improve patient service and 250 new neighbourhood health centres. expanding more services into communities so that people can receive treatment outside of hospitals and get better, faster care where they live. Over 100 of these will be delivered by 2030, including in Birmingham, Truro and Southall. The Labour Party founded our National Health Service, and we will renew our National Health Service. I will take the same approach for defence spending that I take to NHS spending, reinvesting savings back into our national security. In our age of insecurity, Britain will continue to stand with our allies, working in collaboration to secure a sustainable ceasefire for Ukraine and maintaining our commitment to NATO, with the UK set to spend 2.6% of GDP on defence by April 2027. Madam Deputy Speaker, the public rightly expects that we stamp out fraud, error and waste and put that money to good use in our schools and our hospitals and other frontline services. My right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, has already announced that she will claw back excess profits from the use of hotels to house asylum seekers, as we phase out the use of those hotels entirely. And we will consult on reforms to indefinite leave to remain and access to taxpayer-funded benefits. The introduction of digital ID will break the link between illegal migration and illegal working. And the HMRC and the Fair Work Agency will crack down on illicit businesses that blight our high streets and undercut illegitimate firms, enforcing the minimum wage, investigating dodgy businesses, and increasing scrutiny of the gig economy, as well as tracking down fraudulent business owners who vanish without paying their taxes. And I'd like to thank my honourable friends, the members for Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes, Lee and Atherton, and Kensington and Bayswater for their representations on this subject. And I'll take further steps to prevent and track down unpaid tax, which will together, these reforms will raise nearly £10 billion a year by 2030, including through new powers for HMRC to pursue the promoters of tax avoidance schemes. I am building on our successful use of targeted checks on welfare claims to root out fraud and error and prevent public money being paid to people who are not entitled to it. And I would like to thank Tom Hayhoe, the COVID Corruption Commissioner, for his work in helping to chase down nearly £400 million from dodgy pandemic spending and contracts. Contracts handed out by Tory ministers to Tory peers and Tory friends. Well, that money belongs in our schools and in our hospitals.
It is so noisy here, we can barely hear the Chancellor. Everybody needs to calm down. Chancellor.
Well, I wouldn't want any honourable member to miss this. So we are chasing down that money, and we've got almost £400 million back from dodgy pandemic spending and contracts. Tory contracts handed out by Tory ministers to Tory peers and Tory donors. Well, that money belongs in our schools and in our hospitals, and we are getting that money back. And finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, we are ramping up sanctions on Russia, and we are freezing known Russian assets. But let me be clear, I don't actually mean the honourable member for Clacton. Under the Conservatives...
Order. You don't need commentary from the backbenches, and Mr. Dewhurst, you are so loud. It's remarkable how far your voice carries. Chancellor.
Under the Conservatives, the cost of our welfare system increased by nearly 1 percentage point of GDP, equivalent equivalent to £88 billion in just 5 years. The broken welfare system that we inherited wrote off millions of people as too sick to work. And we will reform that system so that it is a system that does not count the cost of failure, but one that protects people who cannot work and empowers those who can. We have brought back face-to-face assessments for disability benefits. Those are the face-to-face assessments that the Shadow Chancellor got rid of when he was Work and Pension Secretary. And our changes to universal credit will get 15,000 people back into work, a figure confirmed today. The former Health Secretary, Alan Milburn, will review the causes of rising youth inactivity, and we are already taking action. I'm grateful to the Federation of Small Businesses and Small Business Britain for their representations on apprenticeships. And today I am announcing funding to make the training for under 25 apprenticeships completely free for small and medium-sized enterprises. Our new youth guarantee, providing £820 million over the next 3 years to give young people who are let down by the Conservatives the support and the opportunity that they deserve. Guaranteeing every young person a place in college, an apprenticeship or personalised job support. And after 18 months, 18 to 21-year-olds will be offered paid work, not benefits. The Motability Scheme was set up to protect the most vulnerable, not to subsidise the lease on a Mercedes-Benz. And so I am making reforms that will reduce generous taxpayer subsidies, and Motability have confirmed that they will remove luxury vehicles from their scheme, getting the scheme back to its original purpose of offering cost-effective leases to disabled people. And taxpayers' money should not be spent on pensions for people abroad, who only lived here for a couple of years and may never even have paid a penny in tax. The Conservatives allowed thousands of people living abroad to buy their way into the state pension for as little as £3.50 a week, debasing the purpose of our pension system. And so I will abolish access to Class 2 voluntary national insurance contributions for people living abroad, increasing the time that someone has to live or work in Britain to 10 years and increasing the contributions that they must pay. These reforms improve our welfare system. They support our young people, protect those who need it most, and put an end to Conservative waste and unfairness. Madam Deputy Speaker, to break the cycle of austerity, we need a fair and a sustainable tax system, one that generates revenues to fund the public services that we all use, and supports investment to grow our economy. That does mean that today I am asking everyone to make a contribution. The previous Conservative government froze personal tax thresholds from 2021 to 2028. And today I will maintain all income tax and equivalent national insurance thresholds at their current level for a further 3 years from 2028. While ensuring that people...
The noise is far too high. Chancellor.
The Right Honourable Lady supported these freezes when her party made them. She might want to forget about it, but the British people never will. At the same time, we are ensuring that people only in receipt of the basic or new state pension do not have to pay small amounts of tax through simple assessment from April 2027. I will also keep the Plan 2 student loan repayments threshold at its 2026-27 level for 3 years. Madam Deputy Speaker, I know that maintaining these thresholds is a decision that will affect working people. I said that last year, and I won't pretend otherwise now. Madam Deputy Speaker, I am asking everyone to make a contribution, but I can keep that contribution as low as possible because I will make further reforms to our tax system today to make it fairer and to ensure that the wealthiest contribute the most. The Conservatives knew that our tax system didn't work. Time and time again, they ducked the necessary reforms, leaving a system unfit for a changing economy, with unfairness that they refused to address. Currently, a landlord with an income of £25,000 will pay nearly £1,200 less in tax than their tenants with the same salary, because no national insurance is charged on property, dividend or savings income. It's not fair that the tax system treats different types of income so differently. And so I will increase the basic and higher rate of tax on property, savings and dividend income by 2 percentage points, and the additional rate of tax on property and savings income by 2 percentage points. Even after these reforms, 90% of taxpayers will still pay no tax at all on their savings. As well as narrowing the gap between the tax on income from assets and income from work, I also believe that a fair society is one where the wealthiest pay their fair share. The reforms I made last year will raise an additional £8 billion a year by 2020-30 from wealth. I increased taxes last year on private equity, private schools and private jets. I abolished the non-dom tax regime. And this year, I will make 2 changes to cap trust charges and prevent avoidance. I reformed inheritance tax on agricultural and business assets. And this year, I am aligning those reforms with wider inheritance tax rules by allowing the transfer of the 100% relief allowance between spouses, balancing the taxation of these valuable assets with the realities of family life. In this budget, I will take further steps to deal with a long-standing source of wealth inequality in our country. A Band D home in Darlington or Blackpool pays just under £2,400 in council tax, nearly £300 more than a £10 million mansion in Mayfair. And so, from 2028, I am introducing the high-value council tax surcharge in England, an annual £2,500 charge for properties worth more than £2 million, rising to £7,500 for properties worth more than £5 million. This will be collected alongside council tax, levied on owners, and we will consult on options for support or deferral. This new surcharge will raise over £400 million by 2031 and will be charged on less than the top 1% of properties. Madam Deputy Speaker, reliefs in our tax system cost the taxpayer billions of pounds a year, but many of them no longer serve their original purpose. The government rightly provides generous tax relief for people paying into a pension, relieving income tax on all contributions and on the investment itself, as well as national insurance relief on employer contributions, at a cost of over £70 billion a year to the Exchequer. This budget makes no changes to those reliefs or to the tax-free lump sum. But salary sacrifice for pensions, which was intended to be a small part of our pension system, is forecast to almost treble in cost to other taxpayers, from £2.8 billion in 2017 to £8 billion by 2030, with the greatest benefit going to the highest earners, or to those in the financial services sector putting their bonuses into pensions tax-free, while those on the minimum wage or those whose employers don't offer salary sacrifice don't benefit at all. That is not sustainable for our public finances, putting pressure on the tax that everyone else pays. And so I am introducing a £2,000 cap on salary sacrifice into a pension, with contributions above that taxed in the same way as other employee pension contributions. That That is a pragmatic step so that people, especially on low and middle incomes, can continue to use salary sacrifice for their pension without paying any more in tax than they do now, and to give individuals and employers time to adjust to these new arrangements. These changes will come into effect in 2029. The coalition government introduced 100% relief from capital gains tax on business sales made to employee ownership trusts, creating a route for gains to go completely untaxed when businesses are sold. I will reduce that relief to 50%, retaining a strong incentive for employee-owned companies. And as we work towards doubling the size of the cooperative economy, the Department for Business and Trade will launch a call for evidence on how we can better support co-ops to grow. Because of the changes that I have made to capital gains tax this year and last year, receipts are forecast to increase from £14 billion this year to £30 billion by 2030. To support our high streets, I am announcing a package of regulatory changes as called for by UK Hospitality and the British Retail Consortium. And I will support the Great British Pub through our new national licensing framework, encouraging councils to back our pubs and to back late-night venues with greater freedoms. For business rates, I will introduce permanently lower tax rates for over 750,000 retail, hospitality and leisure properties, the lowest rates since 1991, paid for through higher rates on properties worth more than £500,000, like the warehouses used by online giants. Alongside this, I will introduce a package of support worth over £4.3 billion over the next 3 years for a property of any size seeing a large increase in their bill. And to support a level playing field in retail, I will stop online firms from undercutting our high street businesses by ensuring customs duty applies on parcels of any value. I will reform our motoring taxes, exempting search and rescue vehicles from vehicle excise duty as called for by my honourable friends, the member for the Western Isles and for Whitehaven and Workington. And because all cars contribute to the wear and tear on our roads, I will ensure that drivers are taxed according to how much they drive and not just by the type of car they own, by introducing the electric vehicle excise duty on electric cars. This will be payable each year alongside vehicle excise duty at 3p per mile for electric cars and 1.5p for plug-in hybrids, helping us to double road maintenance funding in England over the course of this Parliament. And alongside this, I am providing support to boost our British car industry, increasing the threshold for the expensive car supplement on electric vehicles to £50,000, saving over 1 million motorists £440 a year. Providing £1.3 billion additional funding for the electric car grant, extending it to 2030 and taking total funding to £2 billion, as well as delaying changes to the employee car ownership scheme. In addition, we're investing a further £200 million to accelerate the rollout of EV charging, as well as 100% business rates relief for EV charge points for the next decade, with thanks to my honourable friend, the member for Camborne and Redruth, for his representations on this policy. And I will improve competition in our taxi industry by ending ride-hailing companies' use of a discount scheme intended for coach tours, as called for by Steve McNamara, the General Secretary of the Licensed Taxi Drivers Association, legislating to restrict access so that everyone pays fairly and protecting £700 million of tax revenue each year. I am responding to our consultation on landfill tax, and listening to representations, particularly from our house building industry. I will not converge towards a single rate, but I will prevent the gap between the two rates from widening to balance the need to address tax avoidance in the current structure. I will today publish Ray McCann's report into the loan charge along with the government's response, setting out a new settlement opportunity that will finally allow people to finalise their position and draw a line under this long-standing issue. And I'd like to thank my honourable friend, the member for Milton Keynes Central, for her representations on this subject. I will continue with the planned uprating for tobacco duties that I set out last year and uprate alcohol duties by inflation, along with our plans to introduce a vaping products duty in 2026 and changes to the soft drinks industry levy announced by my right honourable friend, the Health Secretary, yesterday. And I'd like to thank the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury for his work on all the tax measures in this budget. I will also reform gambling taxes in response to the rise in online gambling. Remote gaming is associated with the highest levels of harm. And so I am increasing remote gaming duty from 21% to 40%. With duty on online betting increasing from 15% to 25%. I am making no change to the taxes on in-person gambling or on horse racing. And I am abolishing bingo duty entirely from April next year. Taken together, my reforms to gambling tax will raise over £1 billion per year by 2031. As a result of the tax reforms I have made today, I can confirm that I will not be increasing national insurance, the basic, higher or additional rates of income tax or VAT. And I have kept everyone's contribution as low as possible through reforms to make our tax system stronger, closing loopholes, ensuring that the wealthiest pay their share, and building a tax system that is fairer for the future as our economy changes. On the day I became Chancellor, I said that I would judge my time in office a success if I knew that ordinary children from working class backgrounds were living more fulfilling lives. Their horizons expanded, their potential realised. I joined the Labour Party, I came into politics because I believe that every child has equal worth and deserves an equal chance to achieve their promise. The biggest barrier to equal opportunity is child poverty. Because for every child that grows up in poverty, our society pays a triple cost. The first and the heaviest is to the child. Going to school hungry, waking up in a cold home or in another B&B. While other children enjoy the advantages of parents with time to help with homework, the quiet space at home to work in, too many go without. And there is also the cost of supporting a family in poverty, which ends up in the lap of overstretched councils, who can do no more than shunt them into temporary accommodation at huge cost to local taxpayers. Then there is the future cost to our economy and to our society of wasted talent and a welfare system that bears the cost of failure for decades to come. Young people with so much to contribute, but whose potential is suffocated early by limited life chances and missed opportunities, struggling to make their way in a society that did not look out for them. I don't intend to preside over a status quo that punishes children for the circumstances of their birth and demands that we all pay 3 times over for it. Since last July, we've rolled out free breakfast clubs in schools. We're expanding free school meals to 500,000 more kids, lifting 100,000 children out of poverty as we do it. We've passed the Renters' Rights Act and we've extended the childcare offer. And I'm proud of all of that. But it's not enough. Because there is one policy that pushes kids into poverty more than any other. It was introduced by the party opposite. They They said it would save money and that it would bring about behavioural change, disincentivising poorer families from having more children. Well, even on its own terms, it failed. The welfare bill has continued to rise, and there's been no difference in the size of families. But what it has done is to push hundreds of thousands of children into poverty since it was introduced. They said they were punishing parents' choices, but it's the kids who have paid the price. They've paid the price for the policies of a party which opted for cynical gimmicks over real savings in our welfare system. I understand that many families are finding times hard and that many kids have had to make difficult choices when it comes to having kids. And there are many reasons why people choose to have children and then find themselves in difficult times. The death of a partner, separation, ill health, a lost job. I don't believe that children should have to bear the brunt of that. And neither can I, in good conscience, leave in place the vile policy known as the rape clause, requiring women to prove if their child has been conceived non-consensually to receive support. I'm proud to be Britain's first female Chancellor of the Exchequer. I take the responsibilities that come with that seriously. I will not tolerate the grotesque indignity of women of the rape clause any longer. It is dehumanising, it is cruel, and I will remove it from the statute book. And so because I am tackling fraud and error in our welfare system, because I am cracking down on tax avoidance, because I am reforming gambling taxation, I can announce today, fully costed and fully funded, the removal of the two-child limit in full from April. This side of the house. It's amazing what people get so angry about, and we've seen their true colours today. The thing they get angry about is lifting children out of poverty.
Order. Our constituents will want to hear the Chancellor.
I think our constituents have heard all they need to from the party opposites today. We on this side of the House do not believe that the solution to a broken welfare system is to punish the most vulnerable. We are lifting 450,000 children out of poverty with the end of the two-child limit. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, combined with other actions we are taking, this Labour government is achieving the biggest reduction in child poverty over a parliament since records began. That is the difference that this Labour government is making. Madam Deputy Speaker, I know how worried families are about the cost of everything. Worried that their money won't stretch to the end of the month. Worried that price... I think if you've got a house that's worth £5 million a year, you can probably afford it. But you get more exercise about reducing child poverty than you do about the richest paying more. Under this government, wages have risen by more since we were elected than in 10 years under the last government, with lower interest rates already saving families £1,200 a year off a typical new mortgage, compared to that to when Liz Truss was Prime Minister. But I know that people still face pressure on their budgets day to day and week to week. And where there is more to do, where we can provide relief, we are doing it. Extending the bus fare cap, cracking down on rip-off price hikes, freezing prescription charges, and freezing rail fares for the first time in 30 years. I am increasing the basic and new state pension by 4.8%, an increase of £440 per year for the basic state pension, and an increase of £575 per year for the new state pension, in line with our commitment to the triple lock. At At the election, we promised a genuine living wage, and we are delivering it. At the budget last year, I increased the national minimum wage and the national living wage, and I am doing the same this year too. Accepting the recommendations of the Low Pay Commission in full and increasing the minimum wage for 18 to 20-year-olds from £10 to £10.85 an hour, and increasing the living wage from £12.21 to £12.71 an hour. Under current plans, the temporary 5p cut to fuel duty that was introduced during the pandemic will come to an end in April, and fuel duty will be uprated in line with inflation. But I know that the cost of travelling to and from work is still too expensive. And so I am extending the 5p cut until September 2026. And because I know that changes in wholesale prices are not always passed on to motorists, I am bringing in new rules to mandate petrol forecourts to share real-time price rises through a new fuel finder, empowering drivers to find the cheapest fuel, calling out rip-offs and strengthening competition, saving the average household £40 a year. Madam Deputy Speaker, one of the greatest drivers of the rising cost of living is the cost of energy prices. The cause of high energy bills must be tackled at source, and so we are investing in energy security, in nuclear and renewable energy, and in insulation through our Warm Homes Plan. But that's not enough when people are struggling with energy bills today. The Conservatives' Eco Scheme was presented as a plan to tackle fuel poverty. It costs households £1.7 billion a year on their bills. And for 97% of families in fuel poverty, the scheme, get this, has cost them more than it's saved. It is a failed scheme, and so I am scrapping it, along with taking other legacy costs off bills. And as a result, I can tell you today that for every family, we are keeping our promise to get energy bills down and cut the cost of living. With £150 cut from the average household bill from April next year. Money off bills and in the pockets of working people. That is my choice. Not to neglect Britain's energy security like the Tories did. Not to leave working families to bear the brunt of high prices like the Tories did. But to get energy costs down now and in the future. That is the Labour choice. And Madam Deputy Speaker, one more thing. Because of our action on bills and on prices, as a direct result of this budget, the Office for Budget Responsibility confirmed today that inflation is coming down faster and will be a full 0.4 percentage points lower next year. That's the benefit of a Labour government cutting the cost of living. Madam Deputy Speaker, this Labour government is changing our country. In the face of challenges on our productivity, I will grow our economy through stability, investment and reform. I've met my fiscal rules and built our economic resilience for the future. I have asked everyone to contribute, yes, for the security of our country and the brightness of its future. But I have kept that contribution as low as possible by reforming our tax system, making it fairer and stronger for the future. I have protected our NHS, maintaining public investment and driving efficiency in government spending. I've taken action on our broken welfare system, rooting out waste and lifting children out of poverty. And I have cut the cost of living, with money off bills and prices frozen, all while keeping every single one of our manifesto commitments. Those are my choices.
Mr Rankin, Ms Morton, your voice carries right across the chamber. Right across the chamber. Try and take a breath every so often. Chancellor.
Those are my choices. Not austerity, not reckless borrowing, but cutting the debt, cutting waiting lists and cutting the cost of living. Those are Labour choices, promised and delivered by this budget, promised and delivered by this Labour government. And Madam Deputy Speaker, I commend this statement to the House.
Rachel Reeves there wrapping up with her budget. Of course, much of it was known because it was linked in the OBR report. We'll shortly be hearing from Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader. Let's hear what...
Standing Order number 51, the first motion entitled Provisional Collection of Taxes
she will get to speak
must
for
be decided
half the
without
duration.
debate.
We don't know if she's going to use all that time, but she gets to speak for half the duration of what the Chancellor spoke, which was just over an hour.
So it could be 35 minutes now from the...
And then we have great debate in the studio with our politicians.
And unusually, Gloria, of course, she's had a full sight of what's in the budget for about 2 hours now.
So it's often described as the hardest job in politics to respond to the budget, but because of that leak, they've not had a gift from heaven.
And the OBR, of course, that's a full inquiry. They'll report back to the Treasury and also the Treasury Committee. You will have not heard the last of that leak, and heads might well roll in this this part of the economic forecasting part of the government.
You will also have heard the Chancellor saying that she was asking everyone to make a contribution in terms of rebuilding our economy. We know that the minimum wage, now the living wage, is up, so that's good news for those on low pay, good news for families with 3 children, the benefit cap scrapped, fuel bills down from next year, but it's those income tax thresholds, isn't it?
No question, that's the big one. That's amazing, over £8 billion from us going for 3 years, 2031. Here is Kemi Badenoch.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And may I congratulate the Right Honourable Lady on delivering her second budget. I hope she enjoyed it, because it really should be her last. What a total humiliation. A total humiliation.
Can colleagues who are exiting the chamber do so swiftly so we can focus on the Leader of the Opposition? Swiftly exit, quietly. Right. Leader of the Opposition.
It's a total humiliation, Madam Deputy Speaker. Last year, she put up taxes by £40 billion, the biggest tax rate in British history. She promised that she wouldn't be back for more. She swore it was a one-off. She told everyone that from now on, it would be stability and she would pay for everything with growth. Today, she has broken every single one of those promises. If she had any decency, she would resign. Yes. At the last budget, she said she was proud to be the country's first ever female Chancellor. After this budget, she will go down as the country's worst ever Chancellor.
Order. And the Chief Whip in particular knows that we don't allow clapping in the chamber. Leader of the Opposition.
Today she has announced a new tax rate of £26 billion. They're all cheering. Household income is down. Spending policies in this budget increase borrowing in every year. That smorgasbord of misery we just heard from her can be summed up in one sentence. Labour are hiking taxes to pay for welfare. This is a budget for Benefit Street, Madam Deputy Speaker, paid for by working people. This budget increases benefits for 560,000 families by an average of £5,000. They are hiking taxes on workers, pensioners and savers to pay for handouts to keep their backbenchers quiet. These are the same, yes, they chanter all they like. These are these same backbenchers, Madam Deputy Speaker, who cheered last year when she taxed jobs and left more than 100,000 people without an income. They cheered because they didn't understand the consequences of what they were doing, and they still don't. Madam Deputy Speaker, it's not been an easy time for the Chancellor. No one liked seeing her sitting on those benches as it dawned on her that her own backbenchers were going to do to her political career what she's done to our economy. But she could have chosen today to bring down welfare spending and get more people into work. Instead, she has chosen to put up tax after tax after tax, taxes on workers, taxes on savers, taxes on pensioners, taxes on investors, taxes on homes, holidays, cars, I think even milkshakes, taxes on anyone doing the right thing. She and this government have lost what little credibility they had left, and no one will ever trust her again. What's amazing, Madam Deputy Speaker, is that she has the nerve to come to this House and claim this is all someone else's fault. A laundry list of excuses. Yes. Madam Deputy Speaker, they blame the Conservatives as if we've been sneaking into the Treasury under the cover of darkness to give pay rises to the unions. She inherited an economy with inflation at 2% and record high employment. She has tanked it in just over a year. Endless excuses. She blames Brexit. She blames Donald Trump. She needs to blame herself. And I've got some news for her. The Chancellor didn't seem to understand what the OBR was saying. Inflation is up, not down, and that inflation was stoked by her tax and spend decisions. The economic fiscal outlook says that they expect inflation to stay higher for longer. Everybody else has read it. She still hasn't read the OBR analysis. She blames higher than expected borrowing costs. Where does she think they came from? Those borrowing costs are driven by her lack of grip. She is paying more, you're saying us, she's paying more to borrow than Greece. She is paying more to borrow than at any point under the 14 years of Conservative government. If Labour MPs read a book sometimes, they would know something. That includes an energy crisis, Madam Deputy Speaker. Under us, we had an energy crisis sparked by a war in Ukraine and a global pandemic. What is her excuse? What is her excuse? She is taking the public for fools, but they are under no illusions whose fault this is. The fact is, the bad choices she is making today, choices to break promises, choices to put up taxes, choices to spend more of other people's money, are because of the bad choices she made at the last disastrous budget. If you want growth, you need to start with knowing what kind of country you want to be and make a plan to get there. Create certainty for the people and businesses who will drive growth. There is no growth and no plan because Labour focused on settling scores and scratching the itches they had in opposition. She promised stability, she delivered chaos. Just look at the circus around this budget. First the leaks, then more leaks to try to undo the damage. Calling panicky press conferences, U-turning on her U-turns, rolling the pitch one day only to plough through it the next. She had the cheek to talk about stability, Madam Deputy Speaker. She has become the first Chancellor in history to release the whole budget ahead of time. This is extraordinary. It tells you everything you need to know about her grip on the Treasury. She's making the UK a shambolic laughingstock to international investors, and if she doesn't resign for breaking her promises, she should sure as hell go for this. Madam Deputy Speaker, what have we got for all this chaos and disorder? There are 1 million more people claiming universal credit than there were at the time of the last budget. Government spending, up. Welfare spending, up. Universal credit claimants, up. Unemployment, up. Debt interest, up. Inflation, up. And what about the things that you want to go up? What about the things you want to go up? Growth, down. Investment, down. Business confidence, down. The credibility of the Chancellor, and not just down, through the floor. These figures are shocking. Does she really think that anyone will be confused by the sleight of her hand that she had in her speech? Her speech today was an exercise in self-delusion. Today, she had an opportunity to apologize and show some humility. Instead, we've been fed puff pieces in the Times and the FT showing a woman wallowing in self-pity, whining about mansplaining and misogyny. Madam Deputy Speaker, let me explain to the Chancellor. Woman...
Order. Colleagues need to simmer down, most definitely, and just breathe a little and allow the Leader of the Opposition to be heard. Leader of the Opposition.
All we've had is wallowing in self-pity and whining about misogyny and mansplaining. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, let me explain to the Chancellor, woman to woman. People out there aren't complaining because she's female. They're complaining because she is utterly incompetent. Real equality means being held to the same standard as everyone else. It means being judged on results. Take her bright idea, the Office for Value for Money. It's been closed down because it didn't save a penny. In fact, it cost the taxpayer £1.6 million. You couldn't make this stuff up. Madam Deputy Speaker, I've identified a way to save taxpayers huge amounts of money by sacking just one person, the woman sitting opposite. The ex-chief economist of the Bank of England was not mansplaining. He wasn't mansplaining when he said the uncertainty around today's budget is the single biggest reason growth has flatlined. What did the Chancellor think would happen when she went on breakfast telly to do an emergency public service announcement? I interrupt your Cheerios to bring you this frightening message about income tax. And then, unbelievably, she changed her mind 3 days later. No wonder people are in despair. She says she wants people to respect her.
Order. Conservative colleagues are drowning out the Leader of the Opposition speech, so just be mindful nobody will be able to hear her at home. Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Deputy Speaker, she says she wants people to respect her. Respect is earned. She apparently told Labour MPs this week, I'll show the media, I'll show the Tories, I will not let them beat me. Show us what? Making stuff up at the dispatch box, incompetence, chaos, and the highest tax burden in history. She said to them, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'll be there on Wednesday, I'll be there next year, and I'll be back the year after that. God help us. She is spineless, shameless, and completely aimless. Talk to any business. Talk to someone looking for a job. Unemployment is up every single month since Labour have been in office. They don't want to hear it, but it's true. They're shouting and complaining they cannot create jobs. It is the worst year for graduate recruitment on record. Are they proud of this? Companies like Merck and Ineos slashing investment plans.
Order. If you're on the front bench, I can obviously see you, Mr. Kyle. And there's no need for you to be chuntering this loud. They can see and hear you as well. Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. They don't want to hear the truth, but I'm speaking for all of those people out there who are sick of this government. Companies like Merck and Ineos are slashing investment plans. The construction sector has shrunk. How is that house building target going, by the way? I'll tell you, Madam Deputy Speaker, they are miles behind and won't even come close to what we achieved. Business confidence is at record lows. No wonder today future growth has been revised down in every year of the scorecard. The papers are reporting that 1 in 8 business leaders is planning to leave Britain. Even one of Labour's biggest ever donors, Lakshmi Mittal, has fled the country.
Fled. With a passport.
What we have in front of us is a budget littered with broken promises. She stood on a manifesto which promised better returns for UK savers. Today, she's putting up taxes on savings, on salary sacrifice even. She promised to give pensioners the security in retirement they deserve. Today, she slapped higher taxes on people saving for their pension. She promised to make Britain the best place in the world to invest and do business. Today, she has raised the dividend tax rates. She and the Prime Minister had already broken their promise to freeze council tax, but today she's decided to go even further, introducing a new property tax clobbering family homes that will only raise small amounts. This is Labour's Britain. This is Labour's Britain. People who work hard, Madam Deputy Speaker, people who work hard and save hard to buy their homes get taxed more, while those who don't work, who in some cases refuse to work, get their accommodation paid for by taxpayers. And then to top it all off, because taxing your home, your car, your savings and your pension wasn't enough, she has, by her own admission, broken her manifesto promise on income tax. Because in the last budget, she said, and I quote, "I am keeping every single promise on tax that I made in our manifesto, so there will be no extension of the freeze in income tax threshold." She said in that budget that extending the threshold freeze would hurt working people and take money out of their payslips. But today, she has done exactly that. Why should anyone believe anything she's promised in this budget? And so where is the money going? Small changes to rail fares and prescriptions, these are distractions while she steals your wallet. The real story here, Madam Deputy Speaker, the real story is that Labour have lost control of welfare spending. Not only will working people have their tax thresholds frozen while benefits go up in line with inflation, not only have Labour abandoned reforms that would have saved the taxpayer £5 billion after pressure from these backbenchers, today they have added another £3 billion to the bill by scrapping the two-child benefit cap. We introduced that cap, Madam Deputy Speaker, because it means people on benefits have to make the same decisions about having children as everyone else. Even Labour voters know that it strikes the right balance between supporting people who are struggling and protecting taxpayers who are struggling themselves. Just this summer, the Chancellor admitted that lifting the two-child benefit cap was not affordable. But that was before the Prime Minister accidentally fired the starting gun on the race to replace him. So now he and the Chancellor are buying the votes of their own MPs with taxpayers' money. If she wants to reduce child poverty, she should stop taxing their parents and stop destroying their jobs. She congratulated herself on a new tax on landlords. Let me tell her this. Hiking tax on landlords will only push up rents. It will push landlords out of the market. The people who will suffer are the tenants. And then she talks about taxes on electric vehicles. These changes will hit rural drivers the hardest, but we know that Labour don't care about rural people. All this budget delivers is higher taxes and out-of-control spending. Nobody voted for this. The Chancellor must take responsibility. She chose to impose the jobs tax, driving unemployment higher month after month. She chose to abandon welfare reform, meaning the benefits bill is spiralling. She chose to spend more and more money she didn't have, leaving taxpayers to foot the bill. She is out of money, out of ideas, out of her depth, and she has run out of road. The country simply cannot afford a Chancellor who can't keep her own promises. Her position is untenable, and she knows it. She's talking to the Chancellor. Is he mansplaining to you, by the way? Is he mansplaining? Do you want some help? Would you like some help? What the Prime Minister should do is grow a backbone and sack her. But he won't, because he knows if she goes down, he goes down with her. So we're stuck with them both, Laurel and Foolhardy. Does she have any sympathy for the people facing Christmas without a salary because of her jobs tax? For the retailers who are suffering sleepless nights because of their plummeting Christmas sales? People out there are crying. Last year, we had the horrors of the Halloween budget. This year, it's the nightmare before Christmas. And as for her, she's the unwelcome Christmas guest. 10 minutes through the door, and she's eaten all the Quality Street, Madam Deputy Speaker. But let me tell the Chancellor something she has forgotten. Behind every line in today's Red Book is a family, a home, a lifetime of work and sacrifice. People are frightened, and they have every reason to be. The Chancellor has spent the last year terrifying them. Every decision that she and the Prime Minister make puts more pressure on the people who keep this country going. If Labour are the party of working people, why is it that every day under them, thousands more people are signing off work and onto benefits? It's Conservatives who are the party of work. The Labour Party should be renamed the Welfare Party. And they are making a mistake. The British public don't want higher welfare spending. They want people in work providing for themselves. They want to live in a country where hard work pays, where what you put in reflects what you get out. And we agree with them. There is an alternative. We Conservatives have set it out. This budget could have saved £47 billion, including £23 billion from welfare. She could have applied our golden economic rule, allocating half of those savings to cutting the deficit and using the rest to cut taxes. Oh, they're all pretending they're not listening. It's the shame of the mess they've made. It's the shame of the mess they've made.
Order. Mr. Vince. Mr. Thompson, you're so enthusiastic. I was worried you were going to knock Mr. War off his chair a moment ago, so we need to calm down and breathe, and we need to ensure that we can hear the Leader of the Opposition. Kemi Badenoch.
Even the dog is laughing at the Chancellor, Madam Deputy Speaker. She could have applied our golden economic rule, allocating half of those savings to cutting the deficit, using the rest to cut taxes. She could have abolished stamp duty on homes to get the housing market moving, abolished business rates on shops to breathe life into our high streets. She could have introduced our cheap power plan. It saves a lot more money than what she announced would bring down energy costs for homes and businesses. That's what she should have done. She should be on the side of people who get up and go to work, people who take a risk to start a company, people working all hours to keep their business afloat. She should be on the side of the farmer, trying to hand something over to the next generation. The investor, deciding whether to spend their money in the UK or elsewhere. She should be on the side of the young person, looking for their first job. The saver, doing the right thing and putting money away for a rainy day. The pensioner, trying to enjoy a decent retirement. This country works when you make the country work for them. Only the Conservatives are on their side, Madam Deputy Speaker, and our plan for them is simple. Bring down energy costs, cut spending, cut tax, back business, and get Britain working again.
That was the budget, of course. We heard that from Kemi Badenoch. She's Leader of the Opposition, answering to the budget presented by Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who has unveiled her economic choices for our country.
And we're pleased to be joined in the studio by Ian King, the business journalist and financial commentator, and the Shadow Work and Pension Secretary, Helen Whately. And very shortly, we're told she's dashing over to us right now, the Labour MP for Kettering, Rosie Writing. Let's start with Ian King. What stood out for you? What should our viewers and listeners take away from Rachel Reeves' second budget?
Well, essentially, this is a tax-raising budget. That's the beginning, middle and end of it. The proportion of tax as a share of GDP goes up, as the Office for Budget Responsibility says in their leaked report.
It is now, Ian.
Yes.
This is the actual published document.
We all have it, yes.
Which we had earlier.
So tax as a proportion of GDP goes up to 38% in 2029-30. That is an all-time high. Everywhere you look, there are tax increases. The big ticket item, and this one was a bit of a surprise, actually. We were all warned in advance that she was going to freeze tax thresholds for 2 years. She's actually done so for 3 years, from 2028 to 2029. That's the single biggest ticket item in terms of revenue raising. That raises £8 billion a year. The next biggest one, salary sacrifice, which is a tax on people trying to salt money away into their pension direct from their earnings. That is going to raise £4.7 billion. Not all of that's going to come from employees, incidentally. Some of it will come from employers, because when someone benefits from salary sacrifice, the employer doesn't pay employers' national insurance contributions, the big tax she raised last year, of course, on their earnings. So employers will, again, this will push up the cost of hiring for employers.
But that's 2029, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we also have that big increase in tax on dividends and on landlords' income. Again, that's a big ticket revenue raiser. That's some 2.1 billion. Now, where the Chancellor has got lucky is in the forecast from the OBR. Now, we knew in advance that the OBR was going to downgrade its productivity forecast for the Chancellor, but what it's also done, basically, she's got room to do that because of inflation, and higher inflation on wages, for example, that basically gives her the room to do that. Don't get me wrong, it's still a revenue-raising budget, but essentially this is a big tax and big spending budget, as we got last year, actually.
And Ian, you heard the Chancellor there say, "I've made my choices," and then you heard from Kemi Badenoch saying this is a budget for Benefit Street paid for by working people. Is that fair?
Well, it's very... The actual sum that's being given away by lifting the two-child benefit cap is actually slightly less than was briefed out. I mean, the indication was it was £3.25 billion. It comes in at something like £3 billion altogether. There are all sorts of interesting things in the forecast. Gaming, by the way, gaming duty, that's a big hit, £1.1 billion. And I note in the OBR's modelling of this, they say that this is going to drive a lot of gambling into the black market. If it will affect gaming revenues.
Which is unregulated.
Yeah, and that's actually been the experience of the Netherlands, where they raised gaming taxes as sharply as the Chancellor's doing. So the OBR saying that could potentially lower the yield from gaming taxes. It's very interesting to notice some of the share price reactions that we've seen. There was a lot of hope that the North Sea oil levy might get reduced. That hasn't, so North Sea oil producers' share prices are down. Interestingly, the gaming companies are up, because I think things could have been a lot worse for them, and there are exemptions that have been carved out, for example, for horse racing. So Entain, which is the owner of Ladbrokes, their share price is currently up some 3%. The big fallers on the day are the house builders, and I think a lot of that is down to what the proposals on council taxes. This council tax surcharge won't affect an awful lot of viewers.
£2 million houses.
But nonetheless, the OBR says this is going to potentially lower the yield from other property taxes, because you'll get a bunching up at the top end of the housing market. Potentially, people won't move for fear of incurring these taxes if they move up the ladder. So again, that is something to look for. It will, if it affects transactions, house moves, it will affect stamp duty revenues.
And it could be a tax on aspiration. It could be a tax on people not putting a conservatory on a house. If you improve your house, you get punished for it at the very top end in this new mansion tax.
Well, I noticed on Friday in the Times' bricks and mortar section, which is the sort of apogee of property porn, if you like, they actually had a piece telling readers how to lower the value of their house. I mean, which speaks to your point, Chris.
Helen Whately, Shadow Work and Pension Secretary. So one of the big spending things that Rachel Reeves announced was to lift the two-child benefit cap. This is a policy that's independently, people say that if you want to eradicate or lift child poverty, reduce child poverty, that's what you need to do. That policy on its own would make the single biggest difference. Your party is against it. You say you would reintroduce it if you came back. But, you know, most of those families are in work. Fair amount aren't, but most families are in work who get it. So why should child number 3 suffer from mum or mum and dad doing the right thing and going to work?
Well, let's just be clear about why Rachel Reeves is really doing this. We know that she and Keir Starmer are in a really weak position. They totally failed to make any welfare savings back in the summer when they tried. They capitulated to backbenchers on that. It's all with the speculation about Keir Starmer's leadership. So they had to give something away to backbenchers who want more spent on welfare. And this was their big giveaway to raise the two-child cap, costing around £3 billion. Overall, actually, the budget increases spending on welfare by about £40 billion. I will come to your specific question. So, no, on the one hand, as a country, we simply can't afford this. But also, Rachel Reeves makes out it's the answer to child poverty. It's not the answer to child poverty.
Well, independent experts agree that it's the one single policy which would do most to lift kids out of poverty.
Well, if you'll just look at poverty, it's literally just, let's look at the relative poverty figures and the numbers. But actually, we're talking about what makes a difference to a child's chances in life and their prospects. We know the thing that makes the biggest difference is whether somebody in your family is in work. And actually, lifting the two-child cap disincentivises people from going to work. There's evidence about that. So it means that parents are less likely, in fact, to
most of these families are in work,
yes, but it makes them less likely to work.
But you think those...
So it's a wrong thing to do from the point of view of improving the chances of children by having their parents in work. The right thing to do, actually, is to make sure that there will be more jobs and less unemployment and more people in work. That's what they should be focusing on. And also, of course, what you're doing by lifting the two-child cap is making hard-working parents who are not receiving those benefits pay more in taxes. So already we know that families are looking at whether they can afford to have children at all or more children, and then their taxes are going to go up to pay for this. It's simply the wrong thing to do on that basis.
OK, Helen Waitley, thank you for that. Joining us now is our Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood, in Easington. Tom, how is this budget going down in the Red Wall?
Yeah, that's a big question, Chris. I'm here at a pub in Easington, and I have to say, we've been watching along with a group of local constituents here in the Easington constituency. This is a part of the world that the Labour Party really used to own, but switched massively to the Reform Party at the last local elections. So let's talk to some of our people here. Hello. First of all, what do you make of the budget, sir?
Well, if this is Labour's attempt to address the cost of living crisis, it's failed from the outset.
Why is that?
Well, because it's failed to address the major issues in the economy, and it's tinkered round the edges with the two-child cap and things like that. But at the end of the day, we need some bigger policies than just little tinkering.
What do you make of the tax rises?
Let's face it, it's always the same, isn't it? You know, the working people get hammered, the people on benefits get extra. Always the same.
And did you think that there was anything positive in the budget?
There was a couple of positive things. I can't remember off the top of my head now. There was that much to go through. You know, I do like the idea of the increase in the child benefit cap for working people, not for everyone. We've got a situation now where we've got free breakfast clubs, but then they're also going to be getting free money. So why do they need the free breakfast clubs if they're getting extra money to be able to feed the families? I don't understand the logic. It's the taxpayer that's funding both.
Now, Kimmy Badenoch was saying Rachel Reeves should resign. What do you make of that?
I completely agree. You know, this has been an attack on employers and definitely the rural community. You know, the farmers tax and that. I mean, you got seen on the news today, farmers have been arrested just for parking the tractor up there when other people can burn the union flag, which is absolutely disgraceful. And I also think, you know, putting a milkshake tax on, farmers have been asked to diversity. A lot of these farmers put milk vending machines into the farms, and now they're going to get taxed on that as well, which means they're going to charge more, which means they'll lose money because people won't go there, they'll go back to supermarkets for the milk. So I really think this has really attacked definitely the employers and the rural community big style.
Yeah. So we've seen taxes going up, but also benefits going up. The one thing that we're not seeing is any spending cuts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that Rachel Reeves is completely un-Christian because she's squeezing hard-working middle-class families who, you know, the glue of the society that we're in. And if we get rid of that, we're just going to spiral into demise.
Wow, that's a stark assessment. I suppose one of the things that we did hear from the Chancellor was this hope that things might get better in the future, that she wants to fix the foundations. Are you convinced?
No, absolutely not. If we're going to be spending more on benefits, you know, those people are out of work. They're going to be incentivised to be on benefits, so how are we going to become more productive?
And what do you make of the overall approach to this budget?
Can I just say a couple of things, Tom, kept coming up. Economic stability, and then she was asking us regarding the taxes that we're all going to be paying more for. the only way to balance the books was to cut spending, is one of her phrases, a direct quote there. But if you're going to tax our workers to pay for a benefit system, that's not productive, surely, because the taxes should be going to see something that we can actually see is our economy is improving, our GDP is really in a positive way. We're not paying taxes and not seeing the benefit of them. That's mad. But one of the things I really did want to add to the fact is about the young people who are not getting their chances in life. It was great the fact that some of it will be going towards looking after the young people, but plenty of people have said in the retail trade, the hospitality trade, that because they've had to put up national insurances, because they've had to put up the minimum wage and the national living wage, that they simply cannot afford to keep young people on the books or even to attract them in the first place. So you've got this real sort of like strange economic activity where you're saying one thing but the reality is another.
Oh, well, thank you very much indeed. That's just a brief overview here from our focus group in the Easington constituency. Back to you in the studio.
Tom Harwood there in Easington. Thank you for with that excellent reaction there from the Red Wall. Now, joining us in the studio now is Rosie Writing, of course, a Labour MP who's still here with Helen Whiteley. Rosie Writing, the Tories are saying there are 43 tax increases in here. They're saying this money is going to pay for people who aren't working. Kemi Badenoch said it's a budget for Benefit Street, paid for by workers. Is she right?
No, I don't agree with that at all. I think the decisions that were made in this, in Rachel Reeves' budgets, were fair decisions. They were Labour decisions, and they're to protect the most vulnerable in our society, and that includes children. For me, the two-child benefit cap was completely immoral. I understand the need to cut welfare. You know, I've been on this show, I've spoken about that. I think we need to get more people into work.
But you're not doing it, are you? You're not cutting the welfare budget at all.
But I think children should never pay the price.
Helen Whiteley.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry, Rosie, it was just when you were on your way over here, but I said a moment ago that the fact is that just handing out more money, as we're seeing again with the Breakfast Club's policy, it might sound nice, but it actually doesn't improve the life chances, opportunities of children. What improves the opportunities is their parents being in work.
Well, it enables mums and dads to go to work.
What this is doing, well, actually, we saw with the Breakfast Club, so if you saw the video that the Department for Education put out yesterday, that wasn't what parents were saying they were going to do as a result of Breakfast Clubs. So not actually the result of that policy. But the fact is, this is putting taxes up on people in work to pay for other people and benefits to have more children, when we know that people who are in work are really, really struggling anyway to pay the bills and struggling to afford to have the children they want. And it's just a matter of it not being fair, and that's against a backdrop. It's not just the extra £3 billion cost of lifting the two-child cap, but actually overall £40 billion more on benefit spending in this budget, paid for by, we've got around £26 billion worth of tax rises in this budget. We've got inflation higher, borrowing higher, and all these costs piling on, making life harder for working people. So it is a failure to control welfare, benefits out of control, paid for by working people.
Rosie Writing.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think that when the Tories brought in the two-child benefit cap, they acted like it would affect how many, the decisions of parents of how many children they have. I don't think that's the right way to look about it. You don't always know what's going to happen in your life. You have children, you're in a committed relationship, you don't know if your partner's going to pass away, if something's going to happen internationally, like we've seen, or the pandemic that's going to affect the economy. You don't know if you're still going to have two incomes coming into that house, and that can mean children can fall into poverty, and children should never pay the price. But to the Breakfast Club's point, I fundamentally disagree with what you've said, that dropping a child off a breakfast club won't change a parent's life. I grew up in a single-parent family. I knew how difficult it was for my mum to get me and my brother into schools, and she could get to work on time. I saw us every single morning have that rush, and me try and get to school early, or being dropped off at my nan's house, or a friend who could take us. That is difficult. It's difficult for parents who are already struggling at the moment. I think breakfast clubs change lives, and I think removing the two-child benefit cap will lift children out of poverty when your government kept them in poverty.
The thing about your breakfast club is they're free. I mean, many schools do offer breakfast clubs, and as a parent you can contribute to the cost of that. But this is that your party is saying, we'll give away this, we'll give out this, all this free. That's going to take people out of poverty. But actually, it's all being paid for by people who are working. And therefore, you're putting taxes up for people in work. You're making it harder for people to afford things day to day. Actually, you're reducing the incentives to work. And what we're seeing is, 1 million more people gone onto universal credit in the last year under your government. We're seeing 5,000 people a day going on to sickness benefits. So the benefits bill is going up and up, people dropping out of work rather than more people in work. This is bad for the economy and bad for all those people. And the country simply can't afford it. We have to live within our means. And your government is taking us in the wrong direction.
But giving children the best start in life will set them up to get a good job, to contribute to our economy. We are seeing 1 in 8 young people. We are seeing
circling back to the same specific thing of children. No, of course I care about children, but it's not the right answer to the problem.
Under your government, it's a 1 in 8 young people not in education and employment work. That is a damning legacy, and that is why our welfare bill is so big.
1 in 8 business leaders are planning to leave the country.
That's because of our economy. I want to bring in our viewers and listeners, because friends of GB News can vote in today's You Decide poll. You've heard what they think, but what do you think? That's what we want to know. Do you scan the QR code now? And what we want to know is, do you feel better or worse off after the Chancellor's budget? So far, 1%. 1% of you say you feel better off. 99% of you say they're worse off. Let's bring in...
Ian might know the answer.
Yeah. Let's bring in Ian King, because you have continued to go through these rather weighty documents while our politicians have been battling it out over child poverty. What else have you discovered that you'd like to bring?
OK, well, yeah, this is the Red Book, Budget 2025, Strong Foundations, Secure Future, as you might expect from someone who had a picture of Gordon Brown on her wall at university. It's a very Brownian title, that, I feel. I actually have to apologise. I got my numbers wrong a moment ago. Looking at the Red Book, which costs out all the spending and tax decisions, the freezing of the thresholds, believe it or not, the decision to freeze them out for a further 3 years until April 2031, that raises cumulatively nearly £12.5 billion by then. So that
gives you a sense of how many people, when they get a wage rise, a pay rise, are going to be dragged into a new tax category, a higher tax category.
That's the big ticket item. So we know that this move, the freezing thresholds, according to the OBR, 780,000 more basic rate taxpayers. That's people who don't pay any tax at the moment, moving on to the basic rate. 920,000 people more will be paying the 40p rate. And then another 4,000 paying the top rate of 45p, which seems to me to be a little on the low side, given the restrictions that the Chancellor's put in on salary sacrifice. A couple of other things to briefly mention. Right at the back of the Red Book, you've got an annex on government spending. I'm looking between 26-27 and 27-28. The Home Office budget appears to go down, which I find rather interesting. Now, I can only assume that might be to do with the fact that they're hoping to have closed all the asylum hotels by then. Possibly. I notice also it looks to have been quite generous to the devolved governments, the Scottish and Welsh governments and the Northern Ireland executives. Now, they did very, very well last year. It looks like they've done pretty well again this time around. Maybe that's because the government is nervous of reform breathing down their neck in Wales.
Because of elections, of course,
and then
it could be local elections. Or it could be the Barnett consequentials, which rack it up anyway, which is formally using government to increase.
And then one other thing in the OBR report, which is worth mentioning, and obviously you touched on this earlier, the failed attempt to reform welfare earlier this year. The OBR has raised its forecasts on how much sickness benefit is going to be costing. Now, in March, the OBR said that sickness benefit would cost £97.7 billion a year by the end of this Parliament. They've raised that to £103.6 billion. That's by 2029-30. So that's
So that's on sickness benefits.
That's sickness
benefits. Some people will not be able to work, but of course, sums like that, you kind of sort of figure that most of those people would be able to go to work in some capacity.
Okay. Ian King, thank you. And keep going through the Red Book and the documents you got there. Joining us now is GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley, who's on outside Parliament at College Green. Olivia.
Hello, Chris. Yes, the headline here down in Westminster is, of course, that stealth tax. By 2030-31, 1 in 4 people, the OBR estimate, will be paying the higher rate of income tax. That's up from 15% back in 2021-22, when the Tories both froze income tax thresholds for the first time. Now, it might sound a bit dry, but actually that has an enormous impact on the money in your pocket, our viewers, that's the money in your pocket, which will be eroded by this. Living standards are expected to improve by 0.5% in 25-26, but then go down to 0.25% in the following years. So real standards of living, the growth in real standards of living is increasing slower than expected. That is a real blow, not just to the wealthy, not just to those with the broadest shoulders, as Rachel Reeves said, but to everyone. Now, of course, Labour and Rachel Reeves cannot be wholly blamed for this. It was the Conservatives who froze income tax back in 2021, and then they extended that freeze up until 2026. It's now been frozen further than anyone expected, up to 2031. The other main headline is this increase in the welfare spending, £9 billion more in welfare spending. And as was just mentioned there, the OBR have predicted that the sickness spending will also go up over the next 5 years. £9 billion in welfare spending. That really adds fuel to the fire of what Kemi Badenoch was saying, that this is a benefits street budget, that working people are going to end up paying for people who aren't going to work for whatever reason. It is a really politically difficult situation that Rachel Reeves finds herself in. Unusually for this budget, there wasn't that much of a narrative from Reeves. She talked about growth, and that is something that Labour has been talking about since before the election. And of course, there were those initial early meetings with businesses. There weren't actually that many serious growth measures in the budget, and there was something lacking in the narrative there. I think this is going to be a really politically difficult moment for Rachel Reeves, of course, made much harder by the fact that the OBR accidentally leaked that budget an hour before it was delivered. We already knew lots of what was going to be in the budget because of briefings from the Treasury in the months and weeks before, but that OBR release was really the cherry on the cake. Reeves herself was obviously absolutely furious about it, and it seems clear that heads are going to have to roll. Will the OBR have to be abolished altogether? That's the question that people are asking in Westminster at the moment.
Olivia, what is your sense of how the budget and Kemi Badenoch's response are going down with their respective MPs? Because, of course, that's not the most important thing, but they're the people who control whether they keep their jobs.
Well, Labour MPs publicly are obviously being very supportive of the budget. I spoke to one Labour MP, though, who behind the scenes said that she felt very sorry for Rachel Reeves. It was a dark moment for her standing up in Parliament. Now, that's not really what you want your backbenchers to be saying. You don't want to be pitied as a Chancellor delivering a budget. There is also, I've spoken to one Labour MP who was quite annoyed by Rachel Reeves, as she saw it, sort of misleading the public about the need for spending rises. Now, Rachel Reeves has said that why she needs to raise taxes is because she needs to fill a £20 billion hole in public finances. The OBR leak this morning shows that isn't actually the case. The hole that Rachel Reeves needs to fill in public finances is much smaller than she has been implying. These forecasts are updated all the time, so it's not fair to say that Rachel Reeves is deliberately being misleading, but it is perhaps a bit of a sleight of hand. Really, the reason for this rise in taxes is to pay for example, scrapping the two-child benefit cap. So there's a bit of a sleight of hand going on. I've also heard a bit of an annoyance that there hasn't been much talk about raising defence spending in this budget, which is an issue which lots of Labour MPs actually take very seriously indeed. Conservatives on the whole are pretty happy with Kemi Badenoch's performance. One I spoke to said that she was very lucky to have that OBR leak, to have all the details right in front of her with so much warning. They think it's sort of her moment. I'm not sure if that'll feed through into public opinion. Conservative MPs I spoke to at their party conference thought that their leader had had a very successful party conference and thought that she had made an excellent speech, but that wasn't reflected in the polls at all. The Conservatives are really, really struggling to gain momentum at the moment, and it's not at all clear that what the Conservative backbenchers see as a very competent performance from their leader will bleed through into the polls. But it feels like a pretty dark day for Labour and Rachel Reeves, as expected, although Labour MPs I'm speaking to are very much looking for the good things to pull out of the budget, and lots of them are very, very happy about that scrap to the two-child benefits system, which was, of course, very unpopular among the left of the Labour Party.
Olivia Rutley, thank you there with the news from outside of Parliament. Now back to the panel here. We're still joined in the studio by Helen Whately, who's the Shadow Work and Pension Secretary, and Rosie Wrighting, of course, the Labour MP. To you first, Rosie. You heard there from Ian King, £101 billion on sickness benefit by the end of the decade. How is that even remotely possible?
But there was also things to note in this budget. policies put in place in order to get people off of those benefits, things like cutting the apprenticeship levy for under 25s. 1 in 8 young people, as I just said, not in education, employment or work, is a damning legacy of the Conservatives. And in my opinion, it's results of cuts to our public services, people stuck on waiting lists, people not being able to get mental health support, coming out of school and not equipped for a modern workforce. So yes, we do need to get more people into work. There's a moral case to be able to do that.
But the OBR can't think that you are going to, or they wouldn't have put in that forecast of it to go up.
Yeah, and I think it's on us to defy the OBR's forecast, because we do need to get people into work.
Helen Whiteley.
I mean, on unemployment, it's just gone up month on month under your government. Unemployment has got worse. We had brought unemployment down. It's got worse under you. We know that at the last budget, Rachel Reeves' jobs tax has done a job of killing jobs, as you would expect. And this budget is just building on the mistakes of that last budget. And it's blatantly clear that behind these tax rises is the complete failure to control welfare, the failure to get people in work off benefits, and the failure to control sickness benefits, which, as we've heard, are going to go up to over 100 billion by the end of this decade. And your party had tried to achieve some savings to the sickness benefits a few months ago,
Why
but
did
completely
you find it so
failed.
difficult when you were in government? Because obviously it's predicted to go up, but it was massive under your government. It must be harder to control than any sort of, anybody outside the studio would go, it can't be that hard. Just tell people to go to work and they can't have benefits.
Really hard to get back and do that. So clearly, we'll know that in the period of our government between 2010 and the pandemic, we brought unemployment down, we brought the welfare budget down. So we went all of that in the right direction.
Sickness benefits.
From the pandemic onwards was when sickness benefits started going up. This is particularly to do with the rise of people claiming benefits for mental health reasons, an unintended consequence of the attempt to improve the support and recognition for people with mental illness has actually been that these lower-level mental health problems people are claiming sickness benefits for. I've set out that needs to stop. It's not what benefits are there for. Actually, people with lower-level mental health problems and neurodiversity like ADHD could and should be in work. They'd be better off in work. But Labour is just refusing to take any action on this. And that's why we're seeing this complete out of control and taxes going up to pay for it.
So the benefits bill rises, but Rosie's right, looking here at the OBR forecast, it says here you'll pull down net migration in this country to 262,000 next year, and then it goes up to 340,000 by the end of the decade. It seems you're doing the same mistake the Tory made, a soaring welfare budget, and we're relying on net migration to keep the economy going.
No, just picking up on what Helen said, the pandemic did leave a scar on our economy. So did the bad Brexit deal that the Tories passed. And when they're...
That you voted for. Labour MPs voted for.
I wasn't
Rosie,
in
we're going straight to the OBR press conference now and see what they say about their leak. One second,
Chair
Rosie.
Richard Hughes, Professor David Miles and Tom Josephs. In a moment, Richard will run us through a summary of the forecast we've just published, after which the committee will take questions from both those here in the room with us today and those joining us online. Those watching online can submit questions at any time on Slido via the link on our website. Before that, I should start by thanking, on behalf of the committee, staff from the OBR, Treasury and across government for their expertise, flexibility and perseverance in putting this latest forecast together. Of course, all the analysis and conclusions continue to represent the BRC's own independent judgments. With that, let's hear from Richard.
Thanks, Laura, and good afternoon, everyone. Before I turn to the substance of our forecast, let me start with an apology. A link to our Economic and Fiscal Outlook document went live on our website too early this morning and was subsequently removed. We apologise to the Chancellor, members of Parliament for this technical error and have initiated an investigation into how this happened. It'll be reporting to our Oversight Board, the Treasury and the Commons Treasury Committee on how this happened and how to make sure it doesn't happen again. Let me now turn to the substance. Starting with the economy, the productivity performance of the UK economy has continued to undershoot our forecasts, despite several significant downgrades since 2010. And continued sluggish productivity growth, seen years on from the shock of the pandemic and energy crisis, suggests that the sharp rebound we've been expecting is unlikely to materialise. Therefore, following our summer supply stock take, we further revised down our estimate of the underlying trend rate of productivity growth by 0.3 percentage points. As you can see from this chart, This takes it from 1.3 to 1% in the fifth and final.
That's Richard Hughes there with the briefest of apologies. Ian King, you heard what Richard Hughes had to say. He runs the OBR. Is that enough, or should heads roll?
Well, it sounds the narrative is that this is down to human error rather than anything untoward. But nonetheless, people will have made money and potentially on the back of this, having had early sight of these budget announcements. There've been some interesting moves in the in gilt yields over the course of the morning. So it does rather suggest that someone has traded off the back of that, and I imagine it will take months to get the drains up on that particular thing. Very, very clearly. Don't forget the OBR, it's a Treasury agency, so it's kind of at arm's length from the Treasury, and the Chancellor was very, very quick early on in her budget speech to sort of say this was the fault of the OBR. My concern is because I think the OBR on the whole has done a pretty good job over the years in terms of keeping Chancellor of the Exchequer of all parties honest, but yet, as we were discussing earlier, there's a lot of people on the left and the right who would like to see it abolished. But he made a very interesting point on productivity, if I can just say this, Chris, because at the end of the day, productivity is everything. At the end of the day, it's higher productivity that enables the economy to grow, for taxes to be brought in, and that pays for everyone's wages.
It's the size of the cake.
Yeah, and it's the first risk factor that's outlined in the OBR report here, and it says if productivity growth was to match the last 15 years, which is about half the medium-term trend, then the current budget would be in deficit by £6 billion in 2029-30, as opposed to the surplus, the fiscal headroom that we've been discussing, of 22 billion. And here it goes on to say, if productivity were to grow more quickly than in our central forecast, with growth reaching 1.5% in the medium term, based in part on a more optimistic scenario for the impact of AI, the current budget would be in surplus of £59 billion by 2029-30. I mean, think what a Chancellor could do with that money prior to a general election. So it just shows you productivity. Ultimately, it is the be-all and end-all in terms of delivering high living standards.
And on that very point, and we're sorry to cut you off earlier, Rosie, writing, but I was making this point about net migration going up to 340,000 by the end of the decade after dropping next year. It's hung around the Tories' neck, the Boris wave. It's carrying on under your government. The benefits bill is increasing. Why are you not dealing with this problem, which the Tories were so punished for at the last election?
No, I think that we are dealing with the problem. Obviously, I've come on this show before where there's a difference between legal migration and small boats.
This is legal migration.
And this is legal migration. But ultimately, what we need to do is we need to back British workforces. And in order to do that, we need to train young people so they're equipped for a modern workforce. That means training them in things like carpentry, technical skills, science, technology, so they're ready to take those jobs, and we don't have to fill those vacancies with cheaper workforces.
But their projections don't reckon you're going to achieve it because they predict a rise.
I haven't seen the details. Obviously, I've just come out of the chamber. I haven't seen the exact numbers, but I think that we're putting in the things in place so we can back British
and
workers.
If I understand right, these figures don't include the impact of the Employment or Unemployment Rights Bill, which will make the situation with unemployment even worse. Businesses are saying that that's going to stop them hiring particularly young people. So the problem is you're saying one thing, sounds very nice, but actually what you're actually doing is making unemployment worse and is reducing the opportunities for young people to contribute to our economy.
Rosie writing, I think the really dangerous big political point that Kemi Badenoch was making, and I think that the Tories are going to continue to make and attack you for, is the line, Labour is hiking your taxes to pay for more welfare. I think that is really, really politically dangerous for the government.
I think that, as I was saying earlier, there are scars in our economy, the pandemic, the bad Brexit deal, the decisions that the Conservatives made. And when you're faced with a difficult economic backdrop, the Conservatives again and again and again chose to cut our public services. This Labour government has not made that choice.
You could have chosen to cut spending, but you haven't.
We have chosen.
You have chosen to increase spending.
We have chosen to invest in our NHS to get people off NHS waiting lists. We've chosen to invest in our schools. We have chosen to bring children children, can I just say, because we are talking about children, out of poverty so that they can grow up, get good jobs and contribute to our economy.
You're choosing to spend more on welfare, and only a part of that is on the child poverty point that you're making. A huge amount of it is on increasing levels of spending on sickness benefits, which you're choosing not to do anything about.
No, we're choosing
to spend more on welfare, and as a result of that, choosing to tax people more. And your Chancellor said herself, she said at her last budget she had fixed what she saw as the problems that she inherited. We can debate about that and the fact that inflation was right down and up since you guys have been here, and growth and the impact you've had on that, hitting that as well. But anyway, the Chancellor at the last budget said no, she'd done her job of raising taxes and anything else was on her. Now again, she's broken those promises not to make tax rises again. She's done it again.
On that very point,
It's
Rachel
on
writing,
her.
the budget last year, Rachel Reeves said this, she came to the conclusion that extending the threshold freeze, which you've done now, would hurt working people. It would take more money out of their pay slips. You're doing that. You're literally hurting working people by the Chancellor's own words last budget.
When ahead of walking into the chamber today, what I thought about is what decisions I want the Chancellor to make is to make the ordinary families in my constituency, to make their lives better. And when I knock on their doors, they're so often talking about the fact that their wages haven't grown enough. That's why we increase the minimum wage. They're struggling with childcare. That's why we increase access to the 33 hours to childcare. They're struggling to get a good job. I want people in my constituency who I know are still struggling every single day to feel better. I think the decisions that Rachel took today are the decisions that are deep-rooted in Labour values to make ordinary people better.
But they're hurting working people by her own definition.
We have asked the people with the broadest shoulders to contribute into investing in our public services, and I won't apologise. I won't apologise for making the decisions to invest in our NHS, to invest in our education, to make people's day-to-day lives better.
It sounds good, but the problem is actually you're hitting working people with your tax rises. You're hitting the ordinary family that you're talking about. Those are exactly the people that you are hitting with your tax rises.
You did the same thing.
You're hitting people with your tax rises in order to pay for those increases in benefits. You're also hitting the economy. We hear that 1 in 8 business leaders are planning to leave the country. We saw just last week that net immigration, people leaving the country, is much higher than expected. You're driving away wealth, and I'm afraid you're killing aspiration. You're killing
you did the same thing. You did the same thing.
Everyone's prosperity depends.
We're going to come back to you, but actually we want to get out of Westminster. We want to go to the place in the country which is literally Middle England. We want to join new GB News national reporter Jack Carson in Lichfield. Jack, how is it going down in Middle England?
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. Welcome to probably about as central in England as you can get. We've just been watching the budget with Martin Hall, local business owner. Martin, I guess, what are your initial reactions to what Rachel Reeves has said at the dispatch box this afternoon?
It's the numbers for me. I remember 40 billion being raised last year, 26 billion in taxation this year, and it does feel like the working person, the individuals that sort of get up in the morning and go out, and businesses are paying for all this.
Now, there were a couple of things that you did pick up on that actually you thought were quite positive, one being the changes to apprenticeships for under-25s.
Absolutely. I'm a huge sort of supporter of education and business coming together and getting that sort of investment in people, and yes, apprenticeships being funded up to the age of 25 is a positive.
But was ultimately there enough mentioned about business? Do you think over the next year, before we get the next budget, that the next 12 months are going to be a good year for business after this budget?
It was good that business was mentioned very early on. In fact, the first part of the announcement. Do I think it's a positive? Well, we'll have to wait and see. It's already difficult to be running businesses after the last budget. This is a new set of challenges, particularly in the sort of the increase in the living wage, which businesses have got to pay for in all sectors. So it's difficult.
Now, you drive an electric car yourself. Obviously, we got the news that that's going to be hit with a 3p pay per mile tax from April 2028. I mean, obviously, a lot of people over the last few years have been incentivised to get electric cars. I mean, what's your reaction? Are you going to be happy to pay that 3p tax?
No one's happy to pay taxes. And of course, we've had the increase for EVs of road licence, road tax. So this is another cost in addition, and a further tax on drivers that not just individuals but businesses have sort of moved away from those old sort of petrol and diesel cars. A lot of investment, clients that I have, in the electric vehicle fleets. So again, this is just more cost.
Well, one of the things the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch, picked up on and said in her response to the Chancellor's speech was this is a budget for Benefit Street paid for by working people. Is she right in that?
That's an easy phrase for her to use, but I think it's based on what we've just heard, and yeah, it does feel that way.
So, for yourself, you're a local business owner here in Lichfield. How are you feeling about the next few months now? Do you think things have got easier? Do you think things have got more difficult?
It's been difficult for a while. This hasn't eased the pressures, and I think there's a reliance on small, medium-sized businesses to just get on with it, and that's what we do.
Now, looking away from business itself and just reaction to some of the other things mentioned, I mean, one of the things we all have to pay household energy bills. What do you make of the Chancellor saying that there's going to be a £150 cut to the average household energy bill?
Again, that's a positive, but we need to see it actually being delivered, because we've heard about reductions and savings, and we're still not seeing them. So it's in the delivery. We've got to see it.
Now, of course, we're in Lichfield, Middle England, of course, linked close so much with the West Midlands as well. As a region, and as somebody who lives and works around this region, are you happy? Do you think the Chancellor mentioned enough about this region and investment in this region?
I was very pleased to hear that there is a renewed commitment to Midlands Rail Hub, which enables people to move around easier. We've already mentioned about the sort of apprenticeship levy. The ability for mayors to invest in skills and jobs is a positive again. So yeah, it's not all negative, but and time will tell. We've got to sort of work through what we've just heard, but there are some positives in there.
And just finally, if you were the Chancellor, is there something that you would have put in there that you think Rachel Reeves missed today?
As a business owner, as someone who works with businesses, growth was not mentioned as much as it has been in the past, and it's business that will provide that growth, and a cut in business tax would help. So I would have focused more on what we could do for business.
Okay, Martin Hall, local business owner here in Lichfield. Of course, Middle England, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon and, of course, giving us that reaction. I think some really interesting points there for how people are feeling in this part of the country.
Jack Carson, thank you. That was excellent. Now, with us still in the studio is Ian King, the eminent financial journalist. Ian King, how are the markets reacting to what we've heard in the House of Commons?
Well, the FTSE 100 is up, but as I mentioned earlier on, there are sectors that have sold off pretty significantly, most notably the house builders, who've taken an absolute hammering. They're all down between 2 and 4% apiece.
On the back of the budget?
Yeah. Persimmon, Berkeley Homes, they're all off by around 4%. And I think that's concerns over what this council tax surcharge is going to do to housing activity. Berkeley Homes very, very exposed to the London market in particular, so they will have particular concerns. The North Sea oil producers also down very heavily. In terms of sterling, pretty much unchanged on the session right now. Gilt yields actually came off earlier on. They've slightly ticked a bit back higher now, but I think that was when the OBR forecasts leaked, of course, and that would have been taken in quite good stead. I think the fact that the Chancellor does appear to be building up her fiscal headroom for the end of the Parliament, although, as I say, these OBR reports highlight the risk. Can I just come on to...
No, well, I was just going to say, you continue to read all the small print while we've been chatting with our politicians.
Yes. I mean, Rosie and Helen were talking about... there was a bit of an argument going on about disability benefits and spending and so forth. And again, looking at the OBR risks statement here, I touched earlier on the public finances, the fact that the government has borrowed £10 billion more already this year than the OBR was forecasting in March. A lot of that was actually down to excessive borrowing by local governments. And there's some interesting stuff in here about special educational needs and disabilities. Now, obviously, a lot of that is met by local government at the moment. is going to be met by central government from 2028 to 29, and the OBR says this is going to cost £6.3 billion in 28-29. The government has not set out how it intends to fund this from current spending allocations. On the face of it, though, that looks quite good news for a lot of local authorities who are having to shell out quite significant sums in some cases on special educational needs and disabilities provision.
So that's new policy to come then on that?
Yeah, I'm quite interested by that.
And a way to find £6 billion, you say?
6.9.
£6.9 billion. So they say that's how much it's going to cost. But we don't know how you're going to pay for it.
It'll be met out of central government, Now, to go back to the points on welfare spending, again, this is the risk set out by the OBR. And it says here, and bear in mind, this is a big-ticket item. This is a huge area of government spending. There remains significant uncertainty around the future costs of welfare spending due to the growth of disability and health caseloads, which have increased very sharply since the pandemic. We assume in the forecast that these caseloads will continue to rise, but at a slower pace than recently. If growth instead continued at the rate seen since the pandemic, this would raise spending in 2029 to 30 by a further £11 billion. So, I mean, that really shows you the job that Pat McFadden has cut out for him in the working pensions.
Huge job ahead. So, of course, we have Tory and Labour MP in the studio, but there's another party. There's many other parties, but there's a party with 72 MPs. In Parliament, the Liberal Democrats, and Olivia Utley, our GB News political correspondent, is going to talk to one of their members, I understand.
Yes, hello, Gloria and Chris. I'm here with Steph Ackrow, the Liberal Democrat MP for North Norfolk. As Gloria said there, you're a pretty important party in Parliament. You have 72 seats. What do the Lib Dems make of this budget?
Well, I and my party, I think, are just exasperated, like so many people out there will be today. Labour was elected on a promise to grow the economy and tackle the cost of living crisis. And they've not only not done that for the second budget in a row, but they failed to listen to some really practical ways that they could have done it without placing an increased tax burden on working people.
And how do you feel about those frozen tax thresholds? Do you think that was a necessary move, or is it worrying that 1 in 4 people are now going to be paying the higher rate of income tax?
Well, let's be clear, this was far from a Liz Truss budget, so there is some comfort in a degree of predictability, and of course part of that has been the unprecedented amount of leaking that's been going on right up to 40 minutes before the Chancellor took to her feet. But this keeping of the tax thresholds is a stealth tax. It means that as inflation goes up, and even if inflation isn't going up, as prices go up and wages go up, you're still paying more and more tax on a higher proportion of your income. So in reality, it's a tax rise for most people, and that's a real problem because most people I speak to in North Norfolk are really struggling.
Well, would you say that Rachel Reeves has actually broken her manifesto pledge then? Because she said she would not raise taxes on working people. As you say, this is in effect a tax on working people. Perhaps she should resign.
I think that we're on an absolute sort of wafer margin of whether the manifesto pledges have been broken or not.
If you had to say one way or the other?
I would rather be talking about measures that would have created tax receipts without taxing working people and have done something to tackle the cost of living crisis and the crisis that's going on in our high streets. We called for a 5% reduction in VAT, for example, on hospitality and retail businesses to do exactly that. And I'm really aghast that that obvious win was overlooked by the Chancellor today. Really frustrating, just like our policies to cut the impact of energy bills on households. This would have been hundreds of pounds a year within the next few years, overlooked, and yet that would have made a massive difference to people's household budgets.
What do you make of the two-child benefit cap being scrapped altogether?
We've long called for this, and it's come a year later than I would have expected from a Labour government. I know people have got opinions about family planning, but it's absolutely clear to me that you can't help children by punishing their parents. So whatever you feel about people and about the cost of the welfare bill, and don't forget that most of our welfare spending rightly goes on paying the state pension, it's not right, it's not fair, and it costs more in the long term to be punishing the children of families that can't afford to feed and heat and clothe their children.
Everything that you're saying, everything that I hear the Lib Dems saying sounds as though you want higher spending in lots and lots of areas. Do you genuinely think that a Lib Dem government could have managed this budget without increasing taxes on working people?
I genuinely do, because of the big thing which this Chancellor left out of this budget, which was the chance to bring in tens of billions of pounds of extra tax revenue into the UK and save hundreds of millions of pounds from the cost of businesses doing business, and that's getting a better deal with the European Union. And this might be controversial with some of your viewers, but I think the vast majority of people in my constituency who voted Brexit, whether or not they regret it, recognise that they didn't vote for this Boris Johnson Brexit with a deal that's barely worthy of that name. And we believe that it's in everybody's interest for us to be looking at re-entering the customs union, and it would genuinely bring in billions of pounds to the UK exchequer. So in answer to your question, could the Liberal Democrats have done a better job without putting up taxes? Absolutely.
Perhaps just rejoining the EU, going all in, would be the answer to all our financial problems in this country.
I think that rejoining the customs union would be the answer to many of our financial problems in this country at the moment.
Thank you very much. So there you go. The Lib Dems would like to see us going into much closer partnership for the EU. No surprises there for you. Back to Gloria and Chris in the studio.
Olivia, thank you there. Joining us with a Lib Dem perspective. We'll be hearing from Reform UK within the next quarter of an hour, bringing that to you live on GB News, as you might expect. Still with us in the studio, of course, Helen Whately, the Shadow Work and Pension Secretary, and Rosie Writing. Rosie Writing, the 5p cut in fuel duty will lift in September next year. Bad news for anyone who drives around the country.
Well, what Rachel Reeves also announced is this new incentive, which I hadn't actually heard of this idea before, but where on Google Maps it will show you where the cheapest place to get your fuel is. So when you're like I do, I often drive round Kettering and sometimes note which one's the cheaper. You can actually go straight on Google Maps and see, and you can drive straight there and get the cheapest petrol. Not only is this has a consumer effect, it will be cheaper consumers, but it also means that there's a more pressure between different fuel companies, different supermarkets, competition to keep those fuel prices down. So there are impacts there that will positively affect drivers.
Rosie, I don't know when you're next going out door knocking.
This weekend I'm going on Saturday.
Okay. I mean, given we've asked for a poll of our viewers and the early indications were not good, how do you think the doorstep's going to be for you? Because people are still hurting. I mean, they've been hurting for a long, long time, but that's not lifted since Labour have come into power. You'd accept that?
You can see on the screen there, 99% of our viewers think they're worse off, Rosie.
Yeah, people are still hurting. You're exactly right, and I hear that when I knock doors, when I speak to my constituents. To be honest, even when you walk round Kettering, you can see that people are hurting. I wanted to be a Labour politician to change those numbers on your screen, to make people feel better off. I believe that the announcements that Rachel Reeves have made, bringing children out of poverty, are what we are going to do to make people better off. My generation have felt let down by the previous Conservative government, have had a really, really difficult time in the last decade. It wouldn't have been the right thing to increase borrowing and put that debt on the younger generation. I'm glad we didn't make the same mistakes that the Tories did and cut public spending. We have chosen to make the decision to invest and change people's lives in Kettering.
Hello, Whaley. Will the Tories get any benefit from this? Because, frankly, you didn't do much better when you were in office. Surely, maybe Reform or other parties benefit from this tax-raising budget.
Look, I just want to talk about the choices, in fact, and actually borrowing is going up under your government. And the fact is, this is about choices that Rachel Reeves is making. Rachel Reeves is choosing to put up taxes in order to pay for more benefits. Conservatives under Kemi Badenoch would make different choices. We would cut public spending. We've identified £47 billion worth of savings from public spending.
Cutting public spending is why we're in this.
And we would use that to bring down the deficit and to bring down taxes, cut stamp duty, cut taxes on businesses, and that would stimulate growth and make the economy better and make everybody better off. These are different choices. You don't have to do it.
A big rise in pensions, she would point to. A big rise for people on the living wage. Energy bills cut by an average of 150 quid next year. She would say she has made choices in the interest of
They promised to bring
Britain.
down bills down in the manifesto by £300. They're only bringing them down by £150.
We're 1 year in.
So actually, that is another broken promise. And the fact is, it's all very well putting up the minimum wage, but if people can't even get a job, that's not going to help them, is it? So actually, with unemployment going up, it's not helping people. And with inflation higher than it would have been, actually people turn out to be poorer rather than better off.
I think what this shows is the Conservatives have not learned from their mistakes. They would make the same mistake again and again and again. That's why the electorate kicked them out, and it's why they should never be back in power.
I'm really sorry, but everybody I speak to says how disappointed they are with Labour. Even people who voted for you guys
still feel the scars.
This debate will carry on all day on GB News.
You two have been fantastic.
You really have. Helen Whately, thank you, and Rosie Writing.
Martin Dobney takes the hot seat any second. Reform,
Stay tuned
live
all
conference.
day for the coverage on the budget. What a day it's been.
It's the final week to see how you can enjoy Christmas on us. First, we'll give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you a further £10,000 cash to spend on all your Christmas presents, even the tree. Christmas lunch, that's on us too, with £1,000 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB 17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Camilla Tominey. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Me and my mum, and it looks real, doesn't it?
It isn't. I thought that was real when I first saw it.
Yeah, not that you'll be able to see it, but anyway, it's me and
But
mum.
things like that, AI is amazing, isn't it? Because your mum's no longer with us.
Yes.
You've got a lovely video of you hugging her.
Yeah.
Which is lovely.
Which is not real, but anyway, it's. But I liked it. Like the idea, I thought they've done it very well.
Yeah.
It's quite. But good luck to kids learning to tell the difference between all of that.
Well, we are talking about education today. Lots of you getting in touch. Edmund says, my grandson ended up going to hospital with stress over his exams. GCSEs are too much, I think. They've gotten harder and harder. They're not like they were when I was at school. I only got 3 exams done at 16 and then I dropped out afterwards.
What, you get 3 exams at 16?
That's what Edmund got. He says GCSEs are much harder now.
There we go.
Peter says some of us were self-sufficient at 15 years old. We were growing our own food, we were collecting fuel for our fires, and we had paper jobs, not playing with phones and on social media all the time.
That's a very good point. That's absolutely right. You know, people were fighting in the First World War and the Second World War at 15, 16, 17. And, you know, I mean, pressure. I mean, I just think I think we should teach kids to be more resilient.
Yes.
That's the thing. I think that you just can't say they've buckled and we see that as the latest stage. Some of you may agree with me, but I mean, everybody. I mean, how the heck? I could bore you silly, believe me, bore you silly with pressure and things you did for school and you know, what was expected. There was just no tolerance for any leniency in my school at all. But we got through it and I can say happiest days of my life still.
Well, maybe resilience needs to be taught in the national curriculum. Maybe it needs to be taught more
Resilience,
at home.
good idea.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Buckle in, it's 3 p.m. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Martin Dalby Show Budget Special here on GB News, broadcasting live across the UK. All the very latest news, debate and analysis all the way through until 6 p.m. Here's what's coming up on today's action-packed show. Carrying her red box of doom, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves unleashed a blistering £30 billion tax raid, but she maintained she was making the right choices.
To see a credible or a fairer alternative plan for working people. These are my choices, the right choices for a fairer, a stronger and more secure Britain.
Brace yourselves, because 1 million more British workers will now pay a higher rate of income tax, as Rachel Reeves confirmed she would freeze thresholds for another 3 years.
To break the cycle of austerity, we need a fair and a sustainable